This meeting of the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners is called to order. Commissioner Reinhardt, would you please would the clerk please call the roll?
Fretham,
Here.
Matas Castillo,
Here.
McDonough,
Here.
McGuire,
Here.
Ortega, Reinhardt,
Here.
Carter.
Here. Thank you very much. And now, Commissioner Reinhardt, we'll all go on mute while you say the Pledge of Allegiance for us. Thank you.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And I should explain that because of the electronic media, it's difficult for all of us to sync up together. So you'll see our lips moving, but Commissioner Reinhardt pulls us all together with the audio. And thank you very much for that today, Commissioner.
Thank you.
We're going to move on then to the agenda of our August 25th meeting. Is there a motion and a second?
Move
So
approval,
moved.
please.
Second.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McGuire, Commissioner McDonough. Is there any question or discussion on the agenda today? If not, we'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Matas Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Carter.
Aye. Thank you very much. The agenda is approved, and we're now on our minutes from the August 18th board meeting. Are there any questions, additions, subtractions, or comments on those minutes?
Move approval.
Thank you for the motion.
Second.
And the second. Without questions or additions or subtractions, we'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Matas Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Carter.
Aye. Thank you very much. There is an agenda item that says new council chambers artwork. It's not something that we're voting on. It's something that has happened in our chamber that we want to celebrate. Today, we're celebrating that the Ramsey County Board and City Council Chambers has a new look. On last Wednesday, August 19th, 4 new visual art pieces were unveiled in an outdoor ceremony in front of the Ramsey County Courthouse. And community members were able to tour the courtroom to see the art pieces, socially distanced, of course. So today, as we begin our meeting, we will be showing close-ups of the beautiful new art. There is a video projection that should show at this point. Ta-da, there they are, of the beautiful new art that now graces our walls, and that results from a collaborative and community-engaged effort to transform this space into one that more broadly represents our community and more inclusively reflects our past and present, and also our hopes for our future together. So you'll see from St. Paul-based Clues Latinx Mural Apprenticeship Project, lead artists Marina Castillo, Zamara Goyan, Aaron Johnson Ortiz, and Gustavo Liro, and another 10 artists have collectively created a community-informed mural that highlights the Latinx community in Minnesota with a focus on Latina women toward a more complete picture of Minnesota's past, present, and future. You'll see that the painting by Adam Swanson has a goal of celebrating heroes and friends, including current industries working for Minnesota's future health and our sustainable tomorrow, and showing how now more than ever, Minnesotans are acutely concerned about our relationship with industry, water, and the environment. You'll also see that the inspiration for the piece by Leo Yellowbird is a pair of men's Anishinaabe leggings. It's about holding on to traditional values and interpreting them in a more urban setting. The design of a piece here shows how a Native person would have focused on the woodlands, where they live, how they live, what they see, and what they feel comfort in every day. And finally, Earth Stewards by Emily Donovan portrays community gardens that fill acres of land within Ramsey County, spaces where many can gather, spend time outside, grow food sustainably, and celebrate diversity. In Earth Stewards, these community efforts are made visible using natural dyes and pigments, the same that were used by cultures represented in our communities. So here they are, the beautiful new artwork that surrounds us in the Ramsey County County Board and City Council chambers, and inspires us toward the decisions that we are making together and with our community for a more inclusive and prosperous community. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to reflect on those art pieces, and because we have had a lot of work done over a period of a couple of years by Commissioner McDonough and Commissioner Reinhardt, to thank them for their work in representation of all of us. I'll just ask if Commissioner McDonough, you might have a few words to say, Commissioner Reinhardt afterward. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Chair Carter. Real briefly, as you pointed out, Commissioner Reinhardt and I have been a part of this probably for almost 3 years. Council member Amy Brenmullen and Rebecca Naker from the city. And we've had our ebbs and flows throughout those 3 years about what to do, and we certainly heard from community along the way. I think the key pieces that I want to call out real briefly here is when we engaged community and pulled together a task force and basically empowered them to really have a conversation about how to move forward on the artwork in the chamber. You see the results there. It's just amazing, the 4 artists that they ended up selecting. I think we had over 20 that had applied, and the artwork that they provided for us to really change that council chambers that where we meet, the county board, and make it much more welcoming. And the real exciting part that I'm really excited about, and these are perfect and they're amazing, is that the action we took last week is a part of the recommendation that came from the community, is for us to continue to look at ways to engage artists, engage community. We understand 4 pieces are not going to be reflective of our entire community or our entire lived experience within our community and how it's evolved, and to be able to continue to provide opportunities for that representation. But then also look throughout the building for other opportunities so that we're not necessarily constrained by a 2 feet by 60 foot platform here. What does it look like if we maybe provide some opportunities or spaces in the entryways or different parts of the building? So I'm looking forward. This isn't a one and done here by any means. I think there's a lot of exciting things to come. And as I mentioned to Victoria before the meeting, if you get a chance, just go on up. I can't wait till we can get the public in there. We're back in their meeting because it's so impactful and it's so amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McDonough. And I know that we have a long board meeting going, but I certainly want to offer Commissioner Reinhardt the opportunities to comment, and anyone else who has a final thought. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and it's truly an exciting time. And the process, it did take us a while to get through and to figure out how do we do this in the right way and making sure that we have community involvement. The Ramsey County Historic Society was absolutely amazing in the work that they did in pulling everything together and working through this. But as Commissioner McDonough said, this is not one and done. This is the beginning, and it's a great beginning. I do think, though, that I know that it's been over 3 years since I was chair of the board when this started. And actually, we can't even claim it's just that, because this goes back to Commissioner Ruby Hunt and her making a comment about trying to make changes. The reality is we were able to do something even over the years that, 4 or 5 years actually, that we've been working on this. The technology changes that allowed this to happen at a pretty reasonable cost also, but that allowed this to happen and will allow future artwork in different locations and potentially even in the chambers. Is just something that is truly wonderful that we were able to do that, because for folks that were there to or saw the unveiling, these were panels that were much smaller that were able to be projected onto the canvas and be inserted. So, thank those that came before us as well for not only the work that was done as far as making these changes, but also just how much community involvement was part of this. I know I'm just echoing what Commissioner McDonough said, but it can't be underplayed. So thank you to everyone involved, and it's very exciting.
And thank you both for your work on the committee that has resulted in this beautiful space for us now. Are there other comments before we move on to our agenda? I should be looking at my participant list, and thank you. So I appreciate that we are celebrating this today. I know all of us would bubble with thanks and appreciation, but we do have a busy agenda before us. And so we are going to move on then. And now to our COVID-19 update. So I'll turn it over to our County Manager O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. I am joined by two guests today. We have our Health Protection Manager, Laura Anderson. That's her former title, now known as the Deputy Incident Commander in Public Health these days, helping to do the public health briefing, and then she'll turn it over to our Medical Director, Dr. Lynn Ogawa, to help with some of the update. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, County Manager O'Connor. Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Manager, before I offer the numbers today, I just want to acknowledge that we are very nearly 6 months into our response to COVID-19 as a community. Approximately half of our department staff are active in an ICS role. This includes case investigators, public health nurses who are supporting residents in isolation with essential services, health educators doing community-based health education both for our residents and our business community, as well as staff involved in testing our residents. So on behalf of those colleagues, I am happy to present this week's update. I'm going to start with a brief overview from the state. These numbers are accurate as of 11 a.m. yesterday. Within Minnesota, our total cumulative cases are 70,298. We have 717 newly reported cases and 4 newly reported deaths. This includes a death in Ramsey County. The total approximate number of individuals who have been able to access testing in Minnesota is 1,067,810. Total deaths, 1,771 people have died as a result of or related complications to COVID-19. The majority of those deaths have occurred within long-term care or assisted living facilities, 1,313 deaths in those facilities. But we are certainly seeing increased numbers of cases among youth, and I think as the fall continues and we see schools reopen, we should be monitoring that. With regards to the numbers here in Ramsey County, I'd like to ask my colleagues to take a look at that open data portal. Here in our community, we have 8,715 people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19. The number of individuals who have been hospitalized since March is 1,055. 317 of those persons have had to be hospitalized in intensive care. 292 have died. More than half of all persons diagnosed with COVID-19 in Ramsey County describe themselves as Black, brown, or otherwise a person of color. We now have 22% of all our cases occurring among Black Americans, 20% among Asian Americans, and 15% among Latina Americans. We do have some new additions as of last week to our dashboard. This is thanks to our colleagues in communications and planning. And this is with regards to Ramsey tests by week. Yeah, thank you. We started monitoring the number of tests that are being offered to Ramsey County residents in late June. We have continued to monitor that data on a weekly basis. I did note a small uptick in total testing counts as of August 20th, sitting at 11,824 tests that week. We believe that by increasing access to testing, we will have a better understanding of how COVID-19 impacts our residents. That positive diagnosis gives our residents more information that they can use to reduce the likelihood of transmission to their friends, family, and coworkers. I also want to point out the weekly percent positive chart, again in the open data portal. Percent positive is the quantity of positive tests divided by all tests given. We may have a higher prevalence rate in Ramsey County, or it's possible that we have some targeted testing strategies that are helping us catch positive cases sooner. It's difficult for us to know because our state, like other states, does not require healthcare to report those negative test results. As of August 20th, our weekly positivity rate is 7.6%. I am now going to allow my colleague Lynn to share some information around community testing that we have been a part of.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Manager, thanks for having us here. And my colleague Laura alluded to the testing focus that we've had here for the past 3 weekends. We know that communities of color are both impacted by higher rates of infection as well as higher risk for complications associated with the infection, with the COVID infection. We know that that's also very complex in why that occurs. But we recognize that access to testing, finding out that an individual is positive, begins that our ability to support them as public health, but then also in preventing spread to family, friends, and the rest of the public. So we have stood up over the past 3 weekends with the help of community organizations, healthcare, and our own internal teams, testing specifically focused on reaching those communities of color. We have tested over 4,000 individuals within Ramsey County. We are seeing a positivity rate anywhere from 3% to 4.5%, 5%. The majority of those positive, though, are individuals who identify as Native American, Latinx, North African, or Asian. So we know that we're reaching the right populations. Greater than 60% overall of those being tested are from those communities. There's always we want to see those numbers at a rate that are controlled and not too high a rate, but we expect a rate above that of other populations. And so these are good, reassuring numbers that we're reaching individuals early and we're reaching those communities before the numbers are too high. If we look at the comparison of what we're seeing to Jimmy Lee, which was the previous experience post George Floyd's murder, those numbers were much lower in terms of actually reaching the populations of color and also in positivity. So we do believe that our combined effort to work with community organizations such as Hmong American Partnership, KOM, CLUES, all of those in reaching the communities that are most effective is really helping. I have the specific numbers, if people want the specific numbers that we can share later, but we wanted to just give a sense of the overall effect that we're having, which is exceptionally important within Ramsey County. So I'll turn it back to County Manager O'Connor.
Thank you, Dr. Ogawa, and thank you, Ms. Anderson, for the updates from Public Health. I'll add a few more, and then we'll take any questions from commissioners. Over the last week or two, we have seen an uptick in concerning issues related to drug overdoses and particular strains of drugs that have found their way into some of our shelters, our homeless shelters. And as a part of that, we've been working closely with Hennepin County and our law enforcement partners to work to try and root that out and keep everybody safe. But I wanted to point out that we had a gentleman found unresponsive due to an overdose at Mary Hall last week. And because of the heroic actions of our staff, specifically Art Harris, Megan McFarling, and James Johnson, we were able to save the man's life on the fly. And I wanted to take a moment and recognize the individuals who contributed to one more person still being with us this week. They stepped up into action immediately and administered Narcan and did everything right the way that we should. And I want to thank Supervisor Keith Lattimore for sharing that information with me so I could pass it on today. Thanks again to Art and Megan and James for their work to keep our community safe every day and represent the hundreds of staff working in with Ramsey County or for Ramsey County to serve those struggling with housing instability during this time of need. A few other updates on a rosier note. We have been working quietly or carefully with health partners and one of the large international research outfits working on developing a vaccine for COVID-19. We received outreach last week to be a part of thinking about how we can engage around bridging the chasm, specifically related to culture and linguistically appropriate information, by being a part of their work. Through looking at Ramsey County's work around the Racial Equity and Community Engagement Response Team and our continued focus on testing in particular communities that you heard from our public health staff today, it just goes to show that whether looking around the region or state or the globe, as people are seeking solutions to vaccines and future medical treatments for COVID-19, Ramsey County is a part of those conversations. We're following up with our health systems and the entities who are a part of that vaccination effort. And I just wanted to share that news with you that hopefully we can be a part of finding a solution to this virus. A few other updates. In the food and basic needs area, we've added 3 more food, shelf, and grocery contracts, one for Vietnamese social services to increase capacity of culturally appropriate food and basic need items that will focus on Vietnamese, Karen, Karenni, and Somali residents. HAP, also now working with Hmong farmers to deliver produce to families, as well as with Izarun, focusing mostly on halal food shelves that have several Ramsey County drop-off sites. Over 2,500 meals were delivered this past week from the 15th through the 21st, and we had almost 1,400 unique page views of the home delivery site as well. So as the investment in home delivery and meal delivery is clearly having value, and we'll continue to expand the number of providers that we have being a part of our service to the community. Since August 13th, as we look at our mask requests for our Mask for Everyone program and trying to ensure that everyone has access to masks, we received 2,543 submissions for mask requests from individuals or households, 11 submissions from community groups, and 15 submissions for small businesses. Our first A Mask for Everyone distribution event is aligned with one of our testing events. It'll occur this Saturday, the distribution from 1 to 3 at Oxford Community Center. And we are looking forward to that event and continuing to get these masks out to those requesting them. The good news is that we are clearly finding our way to places in need and individuals in need. We basically used up the supply of masks for the Mask for Everyone program in the first week of the program existing. And we're now working within our incident management structure to add additional masks, because that's a sign that clearly this is filling a gap and a need that has existed. And we're going to continue to make sure we have masks available to support the ongoing need from community. Finally, after 1 week of the service centers being redesigned and reopening, I wanted to share a little bit about that as well. By way of reminder, all 5 service locations opened on Monday, August 17th. Each has public computers called resource centers and on-site navigators and an embedded financial worker. 3 of those 5 sites, Maplewood Library, or Ramsey County Library at Maplewood, Ramsey County Library at Roseville, and then the downtown service center at the East Building, also have workforce service community career labs embedded within their service centers. 7 navigators and 4 supervisors were redeployed into this effort. And after a week of training, we went live last week. 319 residents were served with computer reservations last week. 334 residents engaged with navigators, and I won't read the breakdown every week, but I think it's important out of the gate. 226 were classified as general basic inquiries. 91 were classified as service was provided and resolved. 12 required service to be requested and then escalated, and then 5 were classified as other, and I can't tell you on the fly what other means. Maybe it was a different government service or something else. We'll follow up on that. Topic areas discussed included property taxes, masks, elections, payroll, passports, homestead, community career labs, copies needed, veteran services, recorder's office, and financial assistance services, which generally is what we expected. This navigator role is important to not connecting to one service, but many, and people's lives are not lived in the individual silos we've often had, but through these unified service sites, we begin to recognize the lived reality of how people actually interact day to day. And finally, languages spoken by residents: 234 spoke English, 12 Hmong, 11 Karen, 50 Somali, 14 Spanish, 13 unknown. We're working to adjust our dashboard around service delivery on the open data portal to reflect some of these new numbers and new service options that didn't previously exist when we started to measure before. But I just wanted to share with you some of that information to show how we're being intentional. And just a big shout out to everybody who's been a part of the service design work. We have begun an intentional focus of the transition of that work toward the Information and Public Records Service team, where it will be long-term home and housed near the unified team, which has already come to bear across property tax records and election services. That transition started yesterday. It'll carry with us through the end of the year, similar to the homelessness work, and we'll continue to provide updates here as we go. With that, Madam Chair, Dr. Ogawa, Ms. Anderson, myself, we'd stand for any questions you all may have.
Thank you very much for the update. Apologies for taking myself off screen occasionally. I want to check and see if we have questions from our commissioners, and I will call first on Commissioner Reinhardt, then Commissioner McDonough, and Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the new remote services that we have been providing obviously has been very good as far as testing. I do want to point out to people that clearly if there are symptoms, but even if there are not, that these tests are very important. But it's not like some of the previous tests that we've had, in that you may have to go in and have a test many times, depending on who you have been in contact with. And so sometimes it leads people to believe that, okay, I had the test, I was negative, I'm good. But if you've been exposed or potentially exposed, going in and getting another test is something that's important. And in fact, I know they did that after the civil unrest with the murder of George Floyd, because people came in and then they were asked to come back in a week to 10 days later. So I just wanted to point that out. And I guess along with that, I had a question. When you say individuals, is it individual tests or is it individuals that we are counting?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt, thank you for that question. Yeah, it's actually individual tests. We are also making sure that the information that we're giving individuals as we do the testing is just what you had said, because people don't always think about this is just a point in time. And we all live our lives and we're all re-exposed. And so we're telling them you can come back as often as you need to, as often as you are exposed. And we're highly encouraging that people recognize that.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McDonough.
Thanks, Chair Carter. First off, I just want to provide some positive feedback for everybody working on the testing. I've gotten a number of unsolicited, very positive feedback from community members. I got a nice email from a vice president of one of the partners that have been working with us, really calling out the professionalism, the efficiency and effectiveness of the testing. And so I just wanted to make sure we pass along that feedback to the whole team there. I think it's working out extremely well. And then Ryan, I did have a question. I think you started kind of touching base on it with this partnership here with Health Partners a little bit, but you know, early on, Regents had reached out to us to see if we could help them with some education, in particular at that time with the Hmong community, because they were seeing such a spike in members from the Hmong community showing up at Regents testing positive. And, you know, we've got a great partnership here with HAP and KOM and our community partners on the testing. Just wanted to touch a little bit. Through that partnership on the testing, are we going a little bit farther and helping with the education within communities so that they really understand the importance of masks and social distancing and hand washing and all those types of things, the gatherings, those types of things? Are we taking it to that next level to really utilize those trusted community people to help with the education of this, to really help kind of stem the tide here, especially in particular communities?
Thanks for that question, Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough. I'll start and then I'll see if Ms. Anderson wants to add anything from the public health perspective. First, we did follow up with Regions after I think I think you were actually the one that they asked the question to first, and then it came our direction. Director Hadeen and I met with senior Regions leadership to talk about our experience to date at that moment in time, where we were seeing challenges, to be self-critical of both our own system, their system, and the broader state response. I think only sometimes by being critical do we say, where do we work together? And this conversation around how do we have trusted partners in the community, building out access, particularly at the time to testing, but other resources, was a big deal, because there was a shared recognition that there's only so much trust that you can build up on the fly during a pandemic. If that trust did not exist in advance, it doesn't really matter how well-intentioned you might be at that moment. Those were very productive conversations and have borne fruit. I think in the non-testing environment, our public health staff on the ground, our community health educators, are probably playing the largest role. And I don't know if Laura can answer this today. We did offer as an ongoing resource to Regions and other systems the opportunity to engage further with our community health educators along the way to hear more about what we're learning on the ground. Is there anything, Laura, you want to add to that?
I know that our colleagues, our community health educators, have been engaged with health systems, including Regions, Health East, many of our federally qualified health centers. We are providing a lot of education at these testing sites. I think that's what makes them distinct from some other testing partnerships that we've been a part of. But I think that clearly testing is going to be one piece of a much larger emphasis around education and building trust. And I think that we can use, we need to be leveraging our existing connections and building them more closely alongside our health systems at this time.
Good. Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to add my gratitude for the testing on the weekend. I'm similar to Commissioner McDonough. I'm hearing from many people, almost every meeting I'm in, people are grateful for the testing ability on the weekends. In fact, when they don't live in Ramsey County, they're very disappointed that I'm assuming we only test Ramsey County residents, but maybe we do, but other people are like, why can't we do that in our county? So just want to say thank you for providing that opportunity. I think it brings comfort to our residents and really gives them a sense of, some power over their health situation. I do have a question about, I know this is more recent information about reinfection. Are we keeping track of people if they feel that they've been reinfected with that? I know that that's just something that the medical profession is dealing with right now on whether people can be reinfected. And I just was wondering if we're actually keeping track of those numbers. And maybe that's a question for Dr. Ogawa. And I'm not sure if we know anything about that.
Madam Chair and Commissioner McGuire, I'm going to take that question.
You can have it.
I was going to say, I noticed that the looks were towards me, and it is really difficult. We don't have that data yet. We are not specifically looking at the data because collecting that data is really difficult based on the information that we do get from our current testing sites. So our current testing sites, we do get names, addresses, all of those things. We get that information. That information, any positives then are directly turned over also to MDH. MDH is the holder of all of the positives. And they, I'm sure, as we begin to see, the difficulty is that people can remain positive, since these are PCR tests and not antibody tests, people can remain positive for a long time, even after they're not infectious. So double positives in this case won't tell us whether somebody was reinfected, has remained infected, or even, in reality, is infectious all the time. So we have to then take that, and clinically we have to make a decision as providers of care what to do with that information. As we begin to get antibody testing, that alone also won't tell us, because like other infections, once you have an antibody, it will also remain positive for a period of time. And it's true, the medical community is still arguing on a regular basis about whether or not that immunity or that antibody actually provides an adequate amount of immunity. So it's very complex, but we're all thinking about it, that's for sure. And we're all hoping we will have a little bit more information about that in the future.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It is a very uncertain thing, and I thank you for that response. Showing how, we're working on it, but it's uncertain. Thank you for that. Just a couple of questions. I think this will be for County Manager O'Connor, because it's with the masks and then with the service centers. Just a question, curiosity on, are the masks that we're giving out, are these homemade masks, or are we able to purchase masks? Or I'm just curious if you're still, I think we are still taking homemade masks from people. Just if you could clarify that, because I still have people wondering what they can do to help if we're still taking homemade masks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner McGuire, we are definitely still taking homemade masks. There are collection points across Ramsey County. I cannot recite them all off the top of my mind. The service center sites are some of those sites, but there are also additional community sites, including our Public Works building. I'll ask Sarah Holly or Prince Corbett as our Racial and Health Equity Administrators to follow up with the board, specifically listing the collection sites that you could then share through any means you have. We're collecting those cloth face coverings. We did partner with community to create masks as a part of our first run of the Mask for Everyone program. It was both an opportunity to invest in and support community while also getting masks out the door. We are working on procuring more masks right now through every means possible.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure we got that message out that we are still taking masks. So thank you. Thank you for affirming that, County Manager. And then very excited about the service centers. I was at a library board meeting, and I'll report on that later. But you know that we are just so proud of our 3 library locations that are hosting the service centers and these navigators. I'm just curious if you, as you were giving the numbers, and I appreciated hearing the kinds of concerns that people have and how they're being addressed at the service centers. Do you have a sense of how many of these were appointments versus non-appointments? I know we're very much encouraging people to make appointments at these, but I know we do take in some walk-ins, and so just curious if you wanted to comment or could comment on some of that we still are encouraging appointments for these, but we do take walk-ins. So,
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, I don't have any more specific data to share today. I'll continue to ask those questions and bring back what I can in future weeks. In terms of appointments, specifically to ensure you can have access to a computer right away, whether for general use or at one of the workforce sites, or to have a time where you can immediately access a financial worker. If you were to call ahead at 651-266-8500, we can ensure that that can happen, which just prevents the need to have to wait. We will schedule with you. However, if you walk in our door, the navigators are absolutely working with individuals as they walk in. And as you heard from the content today, many of the questions people had may have been, 290 of them were things that I think people probably walked in and just asked. I don't think most of those were appointments.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that added information. I'm very excited about this this ability for people to get their questions answered. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone who's doing that work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Indeed. Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. And thank you for all of the responses that have been provided so far. I do have a couple of questions. I believe that commissioners who had questions already have had the opportunity to ask them. I'm just looking at the screen to make sure that there are no second questions coming. But I did want to ask also, I've been paying attention to our positivity rate, but as I hear the talk about the 7.6% positivity rate in Ramsey County and the 3.5% positivity rate at the centers this past 3 weekends, I just wanted to ask you to confirm how that works. Does that mean that given the lower positivity that we're seeing, albeit the targeted outreach that we're doing to communities most impacted, does that mean that we could be trending down in our positivity rate against that larger 7.6%? That must be an overtime rate. Could you just explain that a little bit so that I am clearer about it?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Carter would be the same person. Madam Chair, just one thought, and then I'll transition to public health. I don't think we're going to be able to draw that conclusion would be the easiest answer to begin with as you get more nuance. And part of it is who is probably going into health systems to access testing. There's probably a certain level of symptomatic testing already going on, so it's a self-selected sample in a way that broad-based community testing may not have at it. And so just statistically, there's a likelihood that you're going to see higher positivity rates in certain settings as people opt into some types of testing over others. Laura or Lynn, would you like to add to that?
Certainly, Madam Chair. I think what I would like to add to that is when we see these numbers floating somewhere between 3.5 and 5% at our community testing sites, what you are seeing, as County Manager O'Connor has indicated, is, clearly that's an audience who wants to get tested. I think that we may also be influenced by other congregate settings in our county that have higher rates of positivity, which will continue to keep that number a little bit higher. So I don't want to raise false hope there.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for clarifying that for me. And I also just want to very much appreciate the work that is being done across the county in all areas, the testing that you've shared with us, the mask distribution, the service center openings, the partnership with various community organizations and healthcare and others, individuals within our community. And to say a very, very special thanks also for the life-saving work that has been done at our Mary Hall location last week. Certainly, that is an effort that we have to celebrate, appreciate, and know that there are opportunities that we may not hear about where heroic activities are taking place. And thank you to all our staff for their ongoing work. Finally, I also want to thank Ms. Anderson and Dr. Ogawa for appearing before us today. We have seen on a regular basis since this outbreak our Director of Public Health, Kathy Hedin, and we know that it's so much bigger a team and that everyone is attentively working to address this issue of COVID-19 and all of our public health on a regular basis, all of our public health needs and all of our community needs. So thank you so much for appearing before us in Dr. Hedin's absence today, and we hope to see you again soon. I'm looking at the screen and I do see that Commissioner McGuire still has her hand raised. I wonder if that means you still have a comment or question. Great. All right. So we are going to say thank you very much, turning to County Manager O'Connor. If there are any final last-minute comments on our COVID-19 update.
Madam Chair, you nailed the thank you, so I won't repeat them, but it does show that this takes a big team of people to get it done every week, and I really appreciate you calling that out. And the Director of Public Health just sent a text message congratulating her staff as well, so clearly she's watching from afar.
She's not gone.
That's vacation for
Okay.
you. But my
Can
last
you take vacation, Director Hedin?
My last real update, Madam
Thank
Chair,
you so much.
in all seriousness, is just to say, I think as we hit the fall here, the conversation around flu vaccines and their importance alongside testing is going to really ramp to the forefront. And it's been kind of a conversation that's been sort of there, but we need to realize that the same barriers to access to testing will exist within the exact same communities when it comes to access to vaccinations and distrust and every other concern. And so I think you're going to see a similarly focused effort from the county working with healthcare providers to be talking about how we get flu vaccines to individuals, because every flu vaccine that prevents flu symptoms helps us prevent what could be a potential concern around a COVID case, which is going to just be a concern all the way around. We started those conversations with our emergency shelter providers as well this week, and it's going to be an ongoing dialogue, but I want to bring it to the forefront of our minds as we leave this topic behind until next week.
Thank you very much. And so we will leave behind then our COVID update with those final thoughts. And as we prepare to move on to the administrative agenda, we'll just take a few moments to reflect. A few moments of silence on our COVID circumstances. Thank you. Thank you very much for those moments on an ongoing basis. And now we'll turn to our administrative agenda. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move item 6 is Parks and Recreation, the temporary construction easement and maintenance agreement with Shoreview and Vadnais Snail Lakes Regional Park. Number 7 is property management, and that is a cooperative agreement with the City of Maplewood. Number 8 is the Safety and Justice Service Team, and that is a joint powers agreement with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
Thank you very much for the motion. Is there a second?
Second. I'll second.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. Are there any comments, questions? If not, we'll ask the clerk to please call the roll for the administrative agenda.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
Modis Castillo,
Aye.
McDonough,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Carter.
Aye. And so the administrative agenda has passed, and we'll move on to our policy item. We have today the opportunity of hearing the county manager's recommendation to the county board on our 2021 supplemental budget. We have a 2-year budget. We are in the 2nd year of our budget. Preparation of the budget is an ongoing process, and even during COVID-19, our staff has been busily reviewing the considerations to prepare our budget. So today, in addition to hearing the county manager's recommendation on the 2021 supplemental budget. We'll also hear the Director of Policy and Planning, who will highlight Ramsey County's efforts in advancing our county goals. We'll hear from the county assessor, who will provide a mid-year update, and our county auditor, who will present the trends that are affecting the 2021 property taxes in Ramsey County. And finally, from our finance department, we'll hear about the 2019 fund statement, and we'll look at our future economic impacts for our county. With that, and with great thanks, I'll ask the county manager, O'Connor, to begin taking us through our supplemental budget presentation. County manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Today I respectfully submit a revised 2021 budget for consideration by the county board. It's an honor to be here presenting on behalf of all of the Ramsey County employees that this budget represents and the work that we do every day in partnership with this community. The COVID update that you just had shows the context in which this budget was developed, and it gets to the idea that this has been a challenging year under all circumstances to develop a revised budget that we bring before you today. At the outset, I want to thank the many staff and community members who have played a role in crafting this amended budget, with special thanks to our, I'm going to still say, new CFO, or first time through the budget process, Chief Financial Officer Alex Kutza, Deputy Finance Director Renee Vogt, former Deputy Finance Director and now Minneapolis Chief Financial Officer Dushani Dye, Policy and Planning Director Elizabeth Tolsman, and then all of the other finance and performance staff that have been a part of building an amended budget while also continuing forward with performance measurement during COVID. Simply put, we did not cut any corners to develop and present this revised budget today. And we all feel that through the amount of effort that has gone in alongside COVID, but we believed it important to this community to ensure that no corners were cut. I want to spend just a few minutes starting in a presentation reviewing where this biennial budget foundationally started when I presented to you a year ago. The strategic foundation for the 2021 biennial budget remains the same in spite of the health and economic challenges facing our community. For it is in this transformative work that a healthier and more resilient community ultimately lies. These were slides you saw last year that I want to spend a minute reviewing again. For those who are watching, I will also remind everyone Ramsey County is unique in its preparation of a biennial or two-year budget. This allows us to have a longer planning horizon. It also means that we had a transformative direction that spanned 2 years, and when COVID became a reality in front of us, we were able to not have to say what will be our direction next year in the spite of an emergency around us, but how do we keep our direction while making changes along the way to reflect the existing economic reality. Our vision, mission, and goals is listed here, and you can see that when we brought this budget before you a year ago and you passed a budget in December, it was deeply rooted in our vision, mission, and goals: collaboration, service integration, residents first, systems reform, racial equity, and community engagement. We're front and center, and hopefully you have seen that throughout implementation during year one of the biennial budget implementation. We will retain the priority of transformative vision, of transformative change through this proposed and revised 2021 budget as well. Here are some areas of focus that will continue to be with us throughout. And by way of reminder, this was the two-phase budgeting process that started back in November 2018 that has been built upon since then and leads to today. Even when we had to go back and made changes, we took a similar approach to the revised budget in 2021. We again said, what are our strategic priorities as set out by the county board through the vision, mission, and goals? And how do we maintain and build upon that work in spite of all the challenges around us? And then how do we work with service teams on the operational budgeting side to recognize the realities in front of us and make smart decisions to ensure that we are both continuing forward with our work, but in a sustainable way that ensures that we are not setting up challenges for 2022 and beyond that this community would then have to bear. This was the Key areas of strategic direction approved in 2020, by way of reminder: transforming systems together, racial equity and community engagement, talent attraction, retention and promotion, and residents first: policy, processes and people, technology and facilities. Simply put, when you view the revised 2021 budget, we started with this in mind and said, these initiatives will continue forward. We will find ways to adjust our budget without impacting this work, because all of this work reflected ways in which we knew that we had to do this work to build a more inclusive and equitable community. We had to do this work to ensure we build a community in which all are valued and thrive. And so it would be counterintuitive by citing the current moment around us as a reason to not take on important work on how we need to transform systems and continue to be sure that we are the public sector employer of choice, doing so in a way that is community engaged and racially equitable to every individual in this community. Now, I do want to spend a moment reflecting on the impact of COVID-19, because to not do so would be missing something that's missing the elephant in the room with all of us. The health and economic impacts from the coronavirus are the greatest in any of our lifetimes that we have seen, and are something that will be written about in history books for many years to come. On top of that, the social unrest that has been with us and a part of our conversation on a national level, but hyper localized as well due to the death of George Floyd. We have not seen such unrest since the 1960s, and compounding these three impacts together have been an ever-present reality during our budget process. We had to re-envision what service delivery will look like as we move forward, and that's been an impact of COVID-19 that has freed us up to think differently for 2021. Housing and homelessness has been a regular conversation here, and one that we will not escape as we move into next year. There are key areas: public health, financial assistance, workforce solutions, community and economic development, where we're seeing demand at levels that are already high, and with some of the waivers in place, not as high as they may otherwise be. And so we both know our demand has gone up, but we anticipate demand will likely increase in the months ahead. We're working to distribute CARES funds by the end of this year. We continue to follow values around keeping residents and employees safe, no matter how we choose to operate. No layoffs or furloughs have been implemented by Ramsey County this year. That continues as a value as we move into a revised proposed 2021 budget. We've instead taken swift action to constrain future hiring to ensure we could live within our means while creating flexibility as we reach the end of this year. Our actions that we took starting in March with all of you as a board then will benefit us as we move into January of 2021 and beyond. We've elevated racial equity and our compliance work throughout this crisis. Instead of saying we can't do new things, we have instead said if we do not do this work, we will not be effective in what we do. So much of our COVID update every week is about who is being served, who is most likely to be harmed by this virus. How do we keep ourselves at the forefront of those conversations? And it is only through further elevation of our racial equity work and our compliance work that assures trust and accountability that we can truly live up to our organizational vision, mission, and goals. We'll continue to follow all of these priorities and values as we move towards 2021. So as I move into the summary of the budget, you'll see a 2021 as previously approved line, which was the budget approved as of last December. And now you will see a 2021 proposed line, which is the newly revised and proposed budget. It's already confusing to talk about the second year of a biennium in a 2-year budget. Now we're talking about a revised second year in the biennium, so I'll do my best, but if I'm unclear at any point, I would ask for your help in the clarification as we go. You can see that the 2021 previously approved levy would have been 4.5%, resulting in a 2.9% approved overall budget increase. That is now shifted. I am here before you today proposing a 0.0% general levy increase for 2021. It does have a slight budgetary increase of 0.8% You'll hear more about that throughout service team and departmental conversations about changes in revenue projections and where things may come in. But it is generally a flat budget from one year to the next, and it is a flat budget on the property tax side. You can see the actual numbers on the right-hand side of the 2021 initially approved budget now being reduced to the new proposed level for 2021. It would result in a budget of $747 million. The regional rail levy remains unchanged in this proposed budget from what it was set at last year, as sales tax revenues are in steep decline, and ongoing capital and long-term investments in transportation that ensures people are able to move across the community and we are able to build a vibrant and inclusive and connected community. This has been a challenging spot where we continue to think through. You can see the total levy here. Based on the statutory maximum and the flexibility used, that still represents a 0.6% decrease from the previously approved budget as our final numbers have come in and we ran the formula. And there is no Housing and Redevelopment Authority levy requested in this budget. However, we will talk about affordable housing and housing stability on future slides and how we are working to reprioritize within our existing tools to ensure that we are meeting the housing stability needs of our community at large. I hope you see that this seeks to balance our enhanced community needs and our need to respond to that with the recognition of the impact on taxpayers across this entire community. I know you all and we all as staff take this to be our most serious charge every year when we build a budget, but it's heightened even more in a year like the one we're currently seeing. The next series of slides will show graphic depictions of where the money comes from and where it's being spent. So I'll move relatively quickly through these. You can see the the pie chart of that information here in front of you for where county funds are going to come from in 2021. Property taxes at 43.6% make up the largest share of the county's budget. That is not new this year. And I'll just say from a broad perspective as we move into this, even with the shifts we're talking about, while they are significant to our operations, while they're significant to our organization, in a $750 million conversation around a budget, the percentage changes are relatively small across the board in any shifts we see. We're not seeing 5 and 10% shifts to different areas. We're really talking about 1 or 2% changes overall. So where the county funds come from, this is always a helpful chart. And this year we have it as the previously approved 2021 on the left, the newly proposed 2021 on the right. And what you can see here, I would encourage you to focus on the top line titled property taxes. It shows that the property tax amount is being decreased in this proposed budget by approximately $16 million. And you can see property taxes will make up a slightly smaller share of the county's overall budget in 2021 as it is now proposed, as it would have made up in the past budget. In other words, most of your funding sources are staying relatively the same. The biggest change is happening in the area of property taxes. Oh, excuse me. As I go back to slide 10, now we're comparing the 2020 approved budget to the new 2020 proposed. We usually compare year over year, and so that's what this attempts to do here with the revised numbers. So it shows the real reduction here. You can see as well, in terms of property taxes are actually slated to go down slightly in the aggregate between 2020 and 2021, just by a little bit there. You can see what it does in terms of relative percentages, and you can see there's an increase in fund balance used in this budget to help balance it. There's a strategic conversation to be had there, and we'll talk more about that as we go. The fund balance is generally targeted at areas in which we are on the cusp of or already implementing transformational change that should result in long-term benefits to the county beyond next year, that should not require us to continue to spend money on an ongoing basis beyond 2021. In other words, we are not using fund balance to create structural deficits in the budget that will be with us in 2022 and beyond. That would be, in my view, irresponsible at this moment in time. Instead, we will use fund balance in areas of one-time opportunity to continue to transform without slowing the work down, without putting out our potential financial risk into further years. Where the funds will be spent in 2021 is the next area we'll look at here on the coming slides. You can see health and wellness, as always, takes up the largest share of the county's budget at almost half of Ramsey County's budget. And you can see where county funds are spent on this slide, comparing the 2021 previously approved with the newly proposed budget. Every area goes down slightly in terms of spending under this revised and proposed budget. From a percentage basis, you can see that health and wellness actually increases its share of overall county spending in the revised proposed budget. What that shows is we have worked to protect the areas most needed for an effective pandemic and economic response, and health and wellness represents many of those areas we've already talked about. And so while other areas see their relative percentages slightly decrease or hold closer to steady, health and wellness is one area where we do see a slight increase. And I think that's notable just for us to be thinking about as we talk about how the budget is shifting as we move forward. And then where county funds are spent when you compare 2020 approved to the 2021 proposed. So where are the changes from the previously approved budget to the proposed budget this year? This is going to be a very high-level overview of that over the next few weeks and through the materials you have already all received that will now be posted online at ramseycounty.us as I am presenting. We will go into greater detail about these percentages, but at a high level, there's about a $20 million conversation overall that we are having, and here's an easy breakdown of what that looks like. $14.2 million of those changes come from service teams and the departments within those teams. In most cases, as Ramsey County is a personnel-driven budget. We're a people business. We serve people, and we have people here to serve people. And so what we are focused on is unfilled positions, looking at our staff complement of almost 4,000 strong, and saying, where did we have opportunities to begin to hold positions open? Where do we have opportunities to prioritize the hires that we needed to have? I want to be very clear, we have not held all positions open since March. About half of all positions that have been submitted to move forward have moved forward since March, but about half of them have not, because there have been recommendations coming from departments and service teams up to the county manager saying we would propose to hold and wait for a better time. This is not the right time to make this hire right now. But there are many areas where hires have gone on. Financial workers, a racial and health equity administrator that was a part of the 2021 budget. These will be some of a few examples of areas where hiring has continued forward. No layoffs, furloughs, or eliminating positions is proposed. The $14.2 million was allocated based on personnel counts on a pro rata basis to each service team. And then each service team worked with its departments to develop final proposals that will be before you in the weeks ahead. So what this means is not every department will come in with the same percentage of changes to their budget. You will see a financial assistance services budget, for example, that comes in without proposing any changes on the personnel side. We actually think we may need to increase staffing in financial assistance services next year. You will see other departments like community corrections, where the significant reform work has taken hold and the closure of BTT has had significant impacts on staffing. And you will see that the decrease in staff or the decreased staffing need at the RCCF and the JDC has created different opportunities for us to invest differently and also continue to consider how we build up areas in which we're supporting people so that they never use a correctional system. That's all a part of the conversation within that $14.2 million. There were also non-personnel adjustments. Public Works is going to propose that some of their work is both an extension of fleet depreciation alongside personnel and other types of choices, right? You make smart, prudent decisions where you can. You don't make it an all or nothing approach in any one category. We've already talked some about fund balance. $2.8 million is suggested or is being requested here to help continue forward with some of our transformative work, particularly in the areas of the health and wellness service team and the restorative justice work happening in the county attorney's office, which very much links to work in the health and wellness service team. And simply put, this is the rainy day that the organization has spent years planning for, and you have all worked very hard to build up as a fund to be available. We want to focus it on innovation and organizational redesign that is now able to continue forward because of the prudent financial management of the organization over many years in preparation for a moment like this. Additionally, $2 million is being deferred in the technology investment that had been proposed as a new countywide investment for 2021. We will continue to look at other ways to bring technology resources to bear. This is not a moment where we're halting technology programs, but we've always been a bit behind in having a structural answer for our technology investment. And basically what we're saying is we're going to go one more year with that question in front of us. It'll be a question that carries into 2022 and beyond. And we've seen our interest that we are expecting to collect reduced by $1 million in this budget due to changing financial conditions around us. The capital budget needs to always align with the operating budget, and so there have been changes there to help reflect that. The 2021 Capital Improvement Program budget, the CIP budget, we'll see, in addition, there is a move towards moving money into affordable housing. You can see that listed here. And then you can see an additional affordable housing investment from resources in the 2020 capital improvement budget that we hit pause on early this year, recognizing the changing environment around us. When you add those two areas of prioritization together, you total $8.9 million that will be available next year for affordable housing investment in Ramsey County. At some level, we wanted to show you the difference in the 2020 number and the 2021 number, but it's the bottom bullet that matters the most. Approximately $9 million is available for affordable housing investment by Ramsey County next year. It's freed up through reprioritization. We're moving a Ramsey County Library project to the fund balance in the Ramsey County Library's fund balance. We'll talk more about that through the budget process. They too have spent years building up a rainy day fund, which now enables an important project to move ahead without using this capital budget as a way to do it. And there are some golf projects that had been a part of the 2020-2021 project related to upgrades at our courses that are being proposed to be deferred beyond the 2021 budget. As we wrap into final thoughts, I'll just share a few of the strengths and areas of challenge that I would put before the board to acknowledge there is never an easy time to remove $20 million from an operating budget in a community in as much need as Ramsey County. And yet it is, I believe, the prudent thing to do. I believe in the strengths. This budget shows the power of Ramsey County's vision, mission, and goals as established by the board, and its durability through good times and times of challenge. It shows our ability to budget over many years to develop a longer-term horizon than 1 year at a time, which allows us to think about both the immediate moments in front of us and the important stewardship we hold for years, many years beyond. We continued our performance measures into this budget, and I hope you see that it shows that this organization is committed to transparent and meaningful measurement to continue regardless of what is happening around us. Our community still demands to know, how are we doing? Where are we successful? Where are we struggling and need to continue to do more to improve? It keeps us focused on the areas most in need that are driving this, that are being driven by this crisis. You're going to see service teams and how they made choices as a team, how they met difficult and challenging targets while thinking about residents first and those among us with the least. In terms of challenges that this budget presents, I don't want to pretend that they don't exist. Homelessness remains an operational concern beyond 2020. $8.9 million in affordable housing is important, but it does not address the fact that Ramsey County is going to spend likely $20 million this year in operational costs in its response to COVID-19. The federal government, the state government, regional partners have yet to answer to us how they will be a part of helping us beyond this year. And that represents 500 people being served right now to ensure that they are safe. And we are working, and if you expand that to Hennepin and Minneapolis, taking similar efforts there as we are with St. Paul, we're talking about 1,000 people who are sleeping outside. We're talking about another 1,000 people in shelters. This budget does not fully answer that question of what happens beyond the end of this year. And I ask to continue to work with all of you on that question. The levy shifts that will occur even with a zero, as you hear today from our assessor, and you hear more about what are the impacts across our community as in any year property tax shifts based on market changes and fluctuations are concerning, and there'll be a challenge for this conversation as we move ahead. I want to acknowledge that up front. It's a frustration that we all feel as we engage in these processes, and I look forward to future dialogue with all of you about that. And I'll finally end on the challenge that ties a little bit to homelessness, but it's broader than this. We cannot fight this economic collapse and this global pandemic alone. The virus needs to be dealt with so that we can begin to do our work in a more normal new environment around us. Our current case numbers are untenable. The current spread of this virus does not work long term to reopening an economy in which everyone has an opportunity to go to work and be successful, and students have an opportunity to learn. This means that the economic recovery requires a response integrated with a pandemic response that goes beyond Ramsey County. This budget recognizes that. It will not solve these broader macro issues alone. However, it is well poised to move into a space where if additional support comes our way, or if questions get asked of how can we help, we will have answers to those questions that will hopefully be helpful to driving both the state, regional, and national conversation. Here are the important dates in the budget process as we go forward. We always like to end on this slide as it's a process that will be with us over the many weeks ahead. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I thank you for the opportunity to present this revised, proposed 2021 budget. I thank everyone who's been a part of building it. I thank the community that has been a part of building this with us every single day and holding us to account. And I stand for any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you very much. I know there are a number of presentations that will follow, and I do have hands up from commissioners. Commissioner McGuire, Commissioner McDonough, Commissioner Matas-Castillo. I'll call on Commissioner McGuire first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, County Manager O'Connor. And to all the staff for all the hard work that you're doing in putting this revised budget together. I really appreciate all the work and all the work that went before this and all the work that you're doing now. I do have a question on as you're going through the revenue forecast, and it stays, very similar. We are conscious, and you mentioned this in your last remarks, about the impact that our federal and state partners will have on this, and we do rely heavily on their participation. We rely heavily on resources from them to really help our budget. So I'm just wondering, in the revenue forecast that you anticipated similar amounts. We know that unfortunately, as the federal and state balance their budgets, which are going to be stressed, that they tend to put it down to the local levels. They cut our budget because they're trying to cut theirs, which is not good for our taxpayers at all. So just curious how you think about that number that is very similar. We're just hoping that our state and federal partners come through for us. And it indicates how much work that we need to do to keep educating them and informing them and working with them as partners. I understand that, but I'm just wondering if you want to comment a little more on that number in the budget forecast.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, thank you for the question. And obviously, this is a nuanced question to which there are many layers. And I would actually ask that this be a question that carries forward into individual budget days and conversations, because you'll hear a slightly different story from different areas of the organization. For example, in Public Works, you will see some areas in which their revenue targets are down significantly due to things like gas tax receipts on a statewide level and what that means for funding that comes to the county. Sales tax is another area where that matters. That shows up more in a capital budget than an operating budget. So it doesn't all become readily apparent right away here, but there are areas where we have downward projections already. In the areas of operating budget, I think it's a fair question, and I think that we don't fully know the answer, and there are always the possibilities of seeing cuts come our way. But I will say this loud and clear at this moment in time. If the state and federal government think cutting budgets are the way to solve the global pandemic and economic collapse in front of us, I would strongly ask that people reconsider that being the policy approach that we take. I would strongly encourage us to think about the need for investment right now. And we are poised for the idea that if nothing else, we will be able to hold the line and not have to see large-scale cuts come our way. My real hope is that we actually see more than that over the long term. But I want to acknowledge that decision-making goes beyond my control, and I would ask for your help in advocating for that at the state and federal level.
I really appreciate that response. Thank you so much. I think it is just a call to action to all of us and all of our partners at the federal and state level that we continue to work on that. So thank you for that response. And then I have one other question. Just on the public hearings that we just had on the last schedule on the calendar, it shows that it's in the council chambers, and I'm thinking that those will be that some of that public hearing will be virtual, or how are you? I mean, I just am wanting some clarification on that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, Madam Chair, could I ask the budget chair to maybe, I think she's got a couple things around process she could help with. Would it be all right if I deferred to her for a second to maybe take the first shot at it?
I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay. Yes, this is Commissioner Reinhardt, and I am chair of the Budget Committee, and Commissioner Matas Castillo is the vice chair of the committee. And I do want to just make a few comments, and we'll answer Commissioner McGuire's question as well. I do want to thank Commissioner Matas Castillo, obviously thanking the county manager, Elizabeth Polsman, Alex Kotska, and Deshani Dye. I also want to thank from Commissioner Matas Castillo's office and mine, Darren Tobolt and Ethan Olson, as we have been going through this process. It's been very hands-on this year, which actually virtual hands-on, I guess. And so we have really worked very closely and are very pleased with the outcome here with the 0% increase, and exactly how much our staff had to really work on this, and commending County Manager O'Connor for bringing this forward in a very difficult time when there are more services that are needed, and still coming in with a 0% levy increase. And before I get into the logistics, I do want to talk just a little bit about retaining the strategic direction. Prosperity, opportunity, well-being for all through the lens of equity is something that we have talked about many times. This one is the accountability side of it. And so the transforming systems together, the racial equity and community engagement, talent attraction, retention, and promotion, and the residents first policies, processes, and people, technology, and facilities, as the county manager talked about, are at the forefront of everything that we are doing here. So the meetings with the service teams and departments on the supplemental budget changes will start on September 1st and will go through September 10th. So we've got quite a schedule here. It is available online, and I know that this slide will come up again at www.ramseycounty.us/budget. On September 10th, on Thursday, we will have the first public hearing on the 2021 budget. That meeting will be held at 10:30 a.m. in the council chambers, with commissioners appearing virtually via Zoom. We really want to acknowledge that the pandemic limits in-person opportunities, so that we will be making accommodations as much as possible for residents to provide comments through electronic or non-contact means. For those that are listening, if you would like to speak to the board, you can call the chief clerk of the board at 651-266-8014. 266-8014, and we'll be repeating that. And you can also email your comments, which will be provided to all of us and become part of the public record at chiefclerk@co.ramsey.mn.us. Or you can sign up in person at the meeting. So we're looking at many different options because we cannot, within the council chambers, to have all the commissioners there, we cannot, and staff, it's not possible to do social distancing there. But we will make this as consumer friendly, constituent ready, and friendly as possible, and trying to work forward. On September 15th, the board will set the 2021 maximum property tax levy, as we are required to do each year. And that is one of the reasons, by the way, that we have set it up so that we have our hearings and our discussions prior to September 15th, which is different than many of the other local governments. We want to make sure that when we are setting that levy that we have had our discussions and have had at least the first public hearing. The second public hearing will be held on November 30th at 6:30 p.m. at a location to be determined. Again, given the pandemic, we are currently looking at facility and technology options to conduct this public hearing in person as well as virtually. So we will be working on that. Heaven only knows what the next couple of months hold for us. The final budget vote by the Board of Commissioners is scheduled for December 15th. And at each of the hearings starting on the 1st of September, I will be repeating these dates so that people know what is happening. We can also, if you go to the website, you can see through the open data portal which items are going to be, which service teams are going to be presenting, and there's, so that you can make sure that we are being as transparent and open as possible in all of this process. So I hope that that answers your question, Commissioner McGuire. We are doing, as we know, the very best to make sure that we are providing opportunities for community input, and this is no different, and I think we have done a fairly good job of making sure that people know that their input is valued, extremely valued, and that we really want to hear from folks about our budget and about what the changes that have taken place here. Again, normally we have the second year of the budget really focusing in on performance measures and really looking at how do we get the results that we want for our constituents, the positive results that we want in moving forward, and we will continue to do that in this budget cycle. So I will end with thanking Commissioner Matas-Castillo and the others and all of the staff and the hard work and the number of hours. People cannot imagine how hard our staff has worked to pull together this budget and to make the changes that we needed to make while still retaining the prosperity, opportunity, well-being, and accountability that is critical and vital to us moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair and County Manager O'Connor.
Commissioner Reinhardt, I want to thank you for responding to the question and also adding that context, knowing that we have a number of things proceeding in this budget presentation. I would have called on you, but it should have been immediately after the presentation by the county manager. I will call on you again toward the end just for some final comments after the entire budget presentation. And also thank you to Commissioner Matas-Castillo. I know that the two of you have held this process throughout the year and ensured together with our staff leadership that we have the opportunity to hear this presentation today. So again, thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
I am looking toward the screen again, and I believe our next question or comment comes from Commissioner McDonough, and then Commissioner Matas-Castillo may be on again.
Thanks, Chair Carter. Ryan, I just want to give some quick feedback. I look forward to the budget hearings to really get a deeper dive and a deeper understanding of the impacts here, but some real some feedback here. I really appreciate the work that you and your team have done here in this proposal, and recognizing that moving forward for the second year of this two-year budget, we needed to definitely make some adjustments, especially when it comes to the property tax increase. And I really appreciate the effort that you put into this and your team, recognizing that this really did start back in March, and the leadership that's come from you and your team about not only being prepared to manage the impact of this year's budget, but positioning us for next year's budget. I do want to touch base real quickly on the affordable housing dollars. I really support this change and emphasis on that, and look forward to be fully engaged here as we move forward on what that looks like and how we can not only bring our money to the table, but as you point out, partners, and we're going to need partners in this area as well as some of the other areas that you've talked about and how we leverage those dollars. And then the one piece, and I did mention this to you at one point here, but I just want to make sure we're really thinking about this in a way that, in the 20 years I've been a commissioner, affordable housing has probably been at the forefront almost always. Much more the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years because the disparities continue to get wider, and the market continues to drive things in a way that we don't have control over. And it's frustrating to watch that we don't have enough affordable housing. We continue to look for more affordable housing, but even when we do make those investments, to watch in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that affordable housing is no longer affordable because the market and external forces take it away from us. And so as we're looking to build out and strengthen our role in the affordable housing area here, really thinking about how do we ensure that this stays affordable, that this will continue so that we can actually grow the pie for affordable housing rather than trying to play catch up all the time. And I know that that's a part of you, and as we make the transition to the housing stability team here in EGCI, and I know it's a part of theirs, but I just wanted to call that out. I'll have some final comments because I really want to connect the next updates and reports that we get from Elizabeth and from Luis and from our auditor here. But again, Ryan, I just want to validate and really send you some positive feedback that I look forward to continuing to partner with you and your team on this budget as Commissioner Reinhardt, our budget chair, leads us through the budget process.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, thank you for those words and thoughts specifically around housing stability. It is frustrating for all of us. I want to acknowledge that. And I think as you look at the market conditions here, as we look at next year, it doesn't make it less frustrating as we go into 2021. Between the budget day with EGCI and the upcoming quarterly opportunities we have before the end of the year, before the launch of the housing office, locking down what is the strategy to use the $8.9 million, which is more constrained as a capital investment dollar than some of the money in the future might be, but also what is the long-term view of how we want to spend those resources. That is work underway right now, and I commit to you we will bring that information back in to discuss with the board. The previous conversation with the board really did highlight that 30% AMI is 30% of area and median income is the largest gap that we're seeing in the market right now, and that we have a responsibility to be a part of addressing that need. But what does that look like on the ground is the question we owe you another response on as we come back before the board.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McDonough. Commissioner Maris-Castillo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo the comments that I'm really proud of the work that the staff has put together and Commissioner Reinhardt as a budget chair to propose this budget here today. It really is responsive of what we're seeing right now in our community and the needs of our community. It was done, thinking and careful planning about what the community can expect, but it still holds that priority of our transformative change in which we are working on. And so this is definitely a budget that I'm very proud to be presenting today. It's unfortunate that our economy has changed so drastically. We were moving on a great path with the proposed budget last year, but we've adjusted quickly and nimbly to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. And then addressing the needs, as Commissioner McDonough said, around affordable housing is very responsive to the ongoing community conversations, the town hall meetings we've been doing, and building a plan. And so I really hope that our members of Ramsey County really realize that this is responsive. This is putting their words, their thoughts, their desires really on paper. And so we've said it before, we'll say it again, our budget is a moral document. And I think this really demonstrates that we are sticking to our morals. And so I just want to thank all the staff that worked really hard to do this. It wasn't easy. And to put together a budget that we can really continue to serve our community well and taking into account those in greatest need. And thanks to Shani, who has now gone on across the river to help them with their budget process, but she left us in a really good place today. So I look forward to how we move through the rest of this.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Modis-Castillo, thank you for those comments. I'll just add from a process side, one of the easiest things to do was to say, we need to propose a budget that brings affordable housing resources to the table because of the conversations we've had with this board throughout last year and this year, where it was loud and clear that this was a priority you wanted to see find its way in. It became more challenging based on a lot of other things around us. And then we had to say, how will we prioritize it to make it happen? But it underscores how workshops on Tuesdays and board meetings every Tuesday, discussion leads to the actions, and those discussions were super important when it became time to make a tangible document here.
Thank you. Commissioner Fratham.
Thank you, Chair Carter. I'll pile on the gratitude with everyone else and just say thank you. I imagine this was an immense amount of work to go back to the drawing board and rerun the numbers and find something workable in this that reflected our values. I think you can be proud of the work that you've done, that you have done, created a budget. And we'll spend the next few weeks digging into it to ensure, check everything over. I've just unwrapped mine, my binder today, so I haven't read through it yet. So far, so good. But I don't want to. I guess what I want to know and want to have a chance to reflect on. Because my fear in this is obviously we're in an economic crisis, and you put it really well that we aren't going to be able to rebuild and our economy and our community until we can address the crisis that is COVID-19 and get the numbers under control and get the virus under control, and that we are still struggling to do that without a unified approach to addressing that crisis. My fear is that some may see what you have done here and wonder why we didn't just do it that way in the first place. And I want to address that you managed to pull off this feat of creating a budget document that adheres to our values, that still manages to move us in the direction of our vision, of our values, to prioritize transformational change, to center racial equity, to get funding for affordable housing, but that we did have to make some compromises in that. And can you speak to that and what we've had to let go of in this supplemental budget and what that means for us?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Fratham, thank you for that question. It's hard to start a budget presentation by saying, well, this is why we didn't do it this way before, but it's a good question to come back to. So the goal of responsible budgeting over many years in partnership with this board and my predecessors in this role has been to build an organization that can be resilient across any cycle that it may encounter. Because we need to acknowledge that when I stood before you last year or 2 years ago, if I would have said, hey, this is what's going to happen in 2020, the looks would have been incredible, right? I mean, we just couldn't have anticipated. And the budget that was built, and by year over year working to build up a stable fund balance, a healthy fund balance for the organization, by ensuring that the debt that the county incurs remains manageable, by thinking through that we build in ways that are sustainable. Sometimes people wish we moved really, really fast on things and went quicker than we maybe could. But by doing it in sustainable ways, it sets you up for a moment like this where you can have a year where you go back to zero and yet do not compromise the values and the work laid out to go. I think it's important to state, I don't think you could create a zero budget every year going forward and expect the same results. And that would be foolhardy to suggest. You can't put money in your savings account and then stop going to work and then continue to draw upon your savings account and say it'll all be good in 3 years. And so this is a short-term
approach. It's a one-year approach to the next biennium. There is no disputing that. But it's one that was done in a way that does not create future bills for us to have to incur. That's kind of the biggest deal. But the fund balance use is not a sustainable way to build budgets over the long term. And in the long term, on healthier times, it's why you build the rainy day fund up for the moments of withdrawal. So I appreciate that question, and I hope that helps. It's that we have an opportunity to carry forward this year while realizing that this year's approach is not the approach that can work every year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was sort of a hedging to things that I expect to hear.
Thank you very much. I do see a couple of hands up, Commissioner McDonough and Commissioner Reinhardt calling on you. Commissioner McDonough.
Yep. Thanks, Chair Carter. I did want to come back, and I hope this is taken not as piling on, but actually adding to a number of commissioners have talked, Ryan, and given you really good feedback about this budget is sticking to our strategic vision and our values and our mission. And I just want to strengthen that feedback to you because I think it's so important. We've been really bold and transformative in this work over the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, but certainly the last 5 years. And every one of those years, we've even gotten, I think, more stronger, more bolder. But we're always tested, right? We're always tested. Is that the right place for this county to be? And you know, every one of those tests, we continue to just reinforce. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we continue to build on that. We continue to bring, you know, our staff, our employees, our community. They're pushing us, and we're bringing others. But this was what could have been a real time to test that resiliency about, is this the right strategic vision? Is this the right transformative work? Are we being too bold for this county? And this would have been an opportunity to pull back from that. It would have been an opportunity to shift. It would have been an opportunity to maybe take a safe way out. And you didn't. And this board would not have wanted you to do that. I know that. The feedback you've gotten, but I just wanted to, again, not pile on, but actually strengthen the feedback you're getting that this work that we've been doing, this strategic work, this values-driven work, this mission-driven work is so critical, and it can stand the test of any crisis that comes at us, and we will not be pulled off of that, and I appreciate you not pulling us off of that in your proposal here today.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, thank you for those comments and for every other board member who's been a part of pushing to not get timid in a moment like this. You know, I think I pulled back up, and maybe we can go there real quickly again. It's that strategic direction from 2020 in the wheel. And whether it's these specific initiatives or it's other initiatives over time that come up, something we've all heard and maybe we've all said at different moments is, how do we add on one more thing, right? That's a comment that comes up in organizations all the time. It's a real conversation to have. You can't always just add to. This tested our ability to say, are these add-ons or are these a part of our core mission as an organization to deliver on? And if nothing else, I hope this budget demonstrates where this fits in the prioritization by saying you don't cut these things first, even if you have to scale back the rate at which you implement certain things or the amount of things you can carry at once. This is a part of the heart and soul for what Ramsey County needs to become and hopefully has already started to become.
Thank you very much, Commissioner McDonough. And I'll turn to Commissioner Reinhardt for a final question or comment.
Well, and I do think that there is, you know, when I think back on our discussions for this year's budget and the wheel that was just up there, the fact is we were and continue to be very bold in the way we are approaching things. And the partnerships that we are building. And I am very grateful for the fact that we took those bold steps last year. We could not have known what was coming in 2020, but it certainly helped prepare us when we made the pivot in how we provide services, because we had this as a base. The transforming systems together, the racial equity and community engagement. We didn't have to somehow come up with that on the fly. and I know that's a statement or a comment that County Manager O'Connor is fond of, because we had this base. And so we needed to remain true to that. And I can tell you that Commissioner Matas Castillo and I, as this was being discussed within the chair and the vice chair of the budget committee, really questioned, can we do this and still remain true to what we are trying to do here? And so there was a lot of work again. The staff has been absolutely amazing in pulling all of this together and providing the answers to that. We are remaining true to what we want to accomplish for Ramsey County. And yes, it is bold, but it is also so critical to the health and economic vitality and everything of our county. I do want to just touch base very quickly on the affordable housing. Commissioner Fretham, McGuire, and I, and actually the county is putting on has a town hall this Thursday that is about affordable housing. But it's also about, and I think we've put these together even within our goals, is we need to understand our history and what has brought us to where we are at, especially with racial equity in affordable housing, and how we got to where we are so that we can make better decisions moving forward. And so that is going to be this Thursday, and I'm sure Commissioner Fretham will talk a little bit more about that. But I think that it is important. For example, I know, and there's so many different complexities over the 401 years as far as racial disparities, but the Homestead Act you can prove that there is proof that almost all of the wealth that has come to white Americans has been as a result of or can be traced back to the Homestead Act, which, of course, people of color were not allowed to participate in. So there's a lot of things to unpack here, but I am excited as we are moving forward and trying to deal with the affordable housing issues, because it goes well beyond just housing when we're looking at equity. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the presentation.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Reinhardt. Wanted to check with County Manager O'Connor, who I don't see right now, in case you had additional comments on this one.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt, thank you for the comments. And I think the interconnected nature of the budget discussions the next 2 weeks will hopefully be a strength of the dialogue as we go ahead. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Great. So this is just a fantastic presentation that we've had, albeit I know the difficulties of managing to this 2021 budget during the COVID period that we are in. I want to thank the budget chair, vice chair, the county manager, and our county leadership for the work that's been done. We have much left in the presentation. I would reiterate all of the comments that have been made about the ability to utilize this transformative period for our transformative agenda. It has been difficult, but truly the foundation of our vision and mission and values and all of the strategic initiatives that are in place have been bricks for us to stand on during this period and have maintained our ability to be solid in the direction in which we've headed, to continue that direction. So once again, thank you for all of the great work that's been done. Ryan, you said that the easiest thing to do was to include resources for affordable housing. Well, we know it wasn't easy, and we thank you for listening to our conversation of the past and into this year as you took it upon yourselves to create the opportunities, the avenues to actually pursue that direction as a part of it. And we do look forward to the partnerships that will enable us in this area of affordable housing and across all of the work that we are doing to uplift that transformative banner in this moment, but truly for the movement of the work that we have established here. With that, I'm going to ask if we can take a 5-minute break prior to the balance of the presentation. We have a lot to go. And so 5 minutes, indeed. We will return then to our board meeting at 10:54, okay? 10:54. We'll hear the rest.
So, oops. I'll bring yours up after Elizabeth. Yep, and all you'll do is, I'll put it in, yes, and then you'll arrow over. So I understand you're gonna do the same for Chris Samuel? Yeah. So it'll be the same thing, he'll be talking on there, and you'll be just managing that. Awesome. All right, thank you. Yep.
Do you want to attend for me? No? I just.
Just a heads up to the council folks, you guys are not on mute, just so you know that.
I think we're ready to go. Gonna gavel us back in. Thank you for returning. We have the opportunity now to continue our budget presentation. And I know that our next presenter is our Director of Planning, Policy and Planning, Elizabeth Tolzman. So with the County Manager's Agreement, we'll go directly into that presentation.
Thanks,
Thank you
Madam
very
Chair.
much.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It's great to see you this morning. I am pleased to be part of our supplemental budget and performance measurement kickoff. As many of you know, this usually in the second year of our biennium, we focus on our performance measures, but as Commissioner McDonough alluded to, we had to make some pivots and adjustments this year. However, I didn't want us to overlook the importance of our community indicators, our performance measures, and all the work that we've done with community and staff in the past year to improve this process, and also the work that you'll be hearing amongst our service teams in the next couple of weeks as it relates to our measures. As some of you know, performance measures is a way for us to see how we made progress in achieving our vision, mission, and Ramsey County's 4 goals of well-being, prosperity, opportunity, and accountability. Before we start, I think it's a good reminder to note the difference between what a performance measure and a communicator is. As mentioned, performance measures is a way to assess and to communicate our progress towards achieving our goals. It also looks at how well a program or a service is doing within the county. On the other hand, community indicators translate broad community goals into clear, tangible, and community-driven outcomes. And they also help us shape actions and policy direction in what we need to do. And they also help measure progress towards achievement of certain results. So just to give you a brief example, a performance measure might be measuring the percentage of number of people in a job training program. An indicator may be the percentage of people who have a livable wage job and also good income. The end result that we hope to achieve is that people have livable wage jobs and income in our community. So that just gives you kind of a primer of how we're utilizing shared language and terminology and understanding this. Another way to look at communicators is how we're comparing between our past, our peers, between our 7-county metro region, and also the potential that we have within our organization and overall community. Some key indicators of what makes a good communicator versus a great one is one, that we have ownership by our intended audience, and in this case, it's not only the county board, our staff, but also our community. 2, we have context and allow for projection of future outcomes. 3, it helps us create priorities for action. 4, they highlight specific community needs and challenges. And finally, they are responsive to changing community conditions, but they also have strong, reliable, and credible data from third-party resources. In this past year, I would note, and some of you may recall, that we decided to engage with community and kind of doing a refined communicators process. And we did this in last November, where we held 3 workshops in small group discussions to set a vision for what our community wants to look like. And as a result of that workshop, we actually came up with key categories and highlighted themes of what we noted was really important for our community. I will note that in your budget book, on the right-hand side here, you will see our indicators from past years. We actually still kept that same format, and we updated the data. But I just wanted to bring your attention that we're still having conversations with community, and also we want to have conversations with the board of what we think success looks like and how we can measure what that may be. So I just want to highlight a few of the things that we've heard from community as we came up with our categories around transportation, civic engagement, youth, families, economic prosperity, and public safety and justice. So and this is all online, by the way, on the public website. The website is here, and you can click on the links there for a little bit more information, and it even pulls up an example of some of our data. So just for example, under transportation, housing, environment, there were a lot of metrics around accessibility, housing, affordability, and climate change. Under the areas of civic engagement and government accountability, voting was a popular one, but also community engagement, equity were also other key themes. Under youth, families, and education, relationships was an indicator, and this reflects what the board had talked about earlier in this year about multi-generational households. Equity in education, not so much high school graduation rates, but whether there are teachers who are representative of our community in our school district. How we're providing work towards English to our community where English is not their first language, and how children are being treated in our schools as it relates to their individual performance plans. Other indicators included health, our justice system, and you hear some measurements with our service team and departments as it relates to that. In the fourth category of economic prosperity and opportunity, things around mobility and access, livable wage, and equity in terms of wealth restoration were also other key themes. And finally, in the areas of public safety and justice, how our community defines what public safety is, equity, particularly to our Black and Brown community, and also transparency and accountability in how our government rural resources are being utilized in this area. So again, it gives you kind of a brief history or summary of what we heard from community as we continue to work to refine these indicators. Next, I just want to show some key highlights of some of our indicators. The first one is around civic engagement and government accountability. If you remember from 2 years ago, we set a short-term objective that we wanted to pre-register 10,000 new voters for our 2018 state general election. As I shared with you 2 years ago, we've exceeded that metric. Then we set an intermediate goal for this year to increase total voting in 2020 presidential election to 300,000 for the first time in the history of the county. I'm not going to share any data for this because I want to reserve that opportunity for our property tax and election services to share this with you in their presentation on September 3rd. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I will note that there's some good ones out there. So you will hear more specifically from that department, and they'll be sharing the percentage of voters who voted in the general election prior to election day, either by mail or early voting. And they'll also give you some updated information and data on the percentage of people who voted for the first time. Our long-term objective in this work is increasing our county voter turnout to be equivalent to the statewide turnout in the 2028 presidential election to be at 75%. And if you look at the trends of this graph, I would note that if you see the low points here, those reflect mid-year elections, so just for some context there. And obviously, in our last presidential election year, we were at 65.8%. We are excited to see where we will hit this year. And obviously, by 2028, we want to hit 75% for the first time in history. The next indicator I'll highlight is around youth, families, and education. As many of you know and have been involved since 2005 through our juvenile detention alternatives initiatives, it has been a goal of ours to reduce the number of admissions to juvenile detention by 75%. And we've done that. So just to share some key highlights, obviously we closed our Boys Totem Town facility last August. And give you a little bit more context on the data, in 2017 we had 844 admissions, 2018 728, and 2019, this past year, down to 707. And again, I think you will be pleased to see some highlights that our departments will be sharing with you in the next couple weeks. Our correctional office will be sharing data around the number of youth that have been admitted to out-of-home displacement. And then you'll see a great open data story from our Ramsey County Sheriff's Department of how they've reduced adult detention, either in response to COVID-19 or through systematic reform. So again, I don't want to give any spoilers on that, but just to highlight how that relates to this indicator and its ongoing work. The next indicator I want to highlight is the percent of Ramsey County residents who travel, the travel time to work is less than 30 minutes. And from 2014 to 2018, that has gone down by 5%. And just to give you a little bit of context, in 2013, the average commute time was 22.6 minutes. And in 2018, that went up a minute to 23.9. But these are important factors because it talks a lot about, our transportation, access, where people are finding jobs, where people are moving, where they are living. And it's also an interesting indicator to highlight. Given in the midst of this pandemic, I'd be really curious to see where this data is a year or two from now. Finally, a popular indicator that we usually like to highlight is showing you the cost of living and median income for a four-person household. And just to note, this is a household for a person of four. And in Ramsey County, you'll see that our cost of living is on average $102,767. However, our Ramsey County median income is $96,087, reflecting in a negative number of $6,680. And you can see, compared to our 7-county median region, the income and the cost of living is pretty close to the same. Another way to look at this is in this graph, where you can actually see the comparisons by our peer counties. And you can see that our peer counties, the difference between cost of living is actually less than the median income household for a person of 4, whereas Ramsey County is in the negative, and that we continue to be the only county in the metro area where the cost of living is higher than the median income, and this gap continues to increase. And if you were to break that down by race, this chart depicts that the median income household, and keep in mind this is regardless of household size, broken down by race and ethnicity. And you can still see that in 2018, there was a $24,670 median income gap between whites and people of color in our community. Again, showing that we have a lot of work to do in this area in terms of well-being, opportunity, and prosperity. Finally, the last indicator I'd like to highlight is serious crime rate. And this just shows that in the last 2 decades, we are seeing a general downward trend in crime. Ramsey County is highlighted in red. To give you other comparisons, Hennepin County is in blue, and Anoka County is in gray. And this is kind of extrapolated just to show that trend from 2014 to 2018. Something to note about this data is that the Uniform Crime Reports actually uses Part 1 and Part 2 crimes in this information. So Part 1 is usually the more serious crimes, such as murder, homicide, aggravated assaults, and robbery. Keep in mind that Part 2 crimes are also included, and this is less serious crimes. That include anything from theft, DUI, disorderly conduct, and so forth. So I just want to provide some context in that data. And another way to look at this is, again, comparing it to our 7-county metro region. And though our serious crime rate has increased from 2016 to 2017, it did began to decrease again from 2017 and 2018. One thing I want to note in this presentation is you may be asking why we're seeing kind of lagging data, and that is because we use ACS data, and that typically lags behind 2 to 3 years. Finally, I just want to highlight that when you do open up your budget books, or for those of you who have already unwrapped it, you're going to see that we've asked our service teams to fill out a form in a new format. We've asked them to condense it that describes their department overview. You'll see their organizational chart, as well as how many full-time employees they have within each department. You'll see our general box of our performance measures, but you're going to see a deeper analysis of how we've gone through this process. And I want to highlight a few things there. First of all, for the first time, we leverage our in-house planning and evaluation staff to help us through this process. And this is why I'd say that we spend a lot of time through training and development in this area. Before, it was just housed in the policy planning department, and we partnered with finance to drive this process. But we truly believe that people needed to understand and speak the language and understanding the performance measurement process if we are to be truly authentic in what we're trying to do. In the past, I believe that we've done a lot of great work in measuring how much we've done and how well we've done it, but rarely have we measured whether anybody is better off. And I heard this loud and clear during the budget presentations last year, where there were actually a lot of questions around metrics and outcomes than there were around numbers. In this process, I do want to call out and commend some staff that were critical in this key process. Zachary Hilton and the entire policy planning team in helping us build this timeline and process in the last year. Then I want to call out the PMAT leads from each of the service teams: Christine Grill from IPR, Dana DeMaster for Health and Wellness, Rich Stevens for Safety and Justice, Brian Isaacson for EGCI, and Mi Cheng for Strategic Team. They galvanized a PMAT team, Performance Measurement Action Team, and worked with them since January of this year in this process to really prepare for this day. And then when the pandemic hit, we had to hit a pause on various things. And I would note that they really wanted to highlight 5 to 7 metrics in this process, but given the condensed timeline, we actually had them to pull it back to 2 to 3. But I highlight that because I don't want you to feel that they were limited to that or that their metrics are limited to those measures. They actually have a lot to share. And you will find that through our open data portal that you'll see more data and metrics built by departments and service teams throughout the year. One part of our training is we use the results-based accountability method, where performance measurements focus more on outcomes and they analyze our service delivery impact. We actually were able to give a condensed training to that to our budget chair and vice chair earlier this year, and so they have a good sense of that analysis there. Then you also see a deeper analysis of the story behind the baseline, including how we are advancing race equity and how we're including meaningful community engagement and shared community power in the process. And finally, you'll see a section that explains what it takes to do better and how we are planning for the future. These are the 7 results-based accountability that we asked our departments and service teams to address. And again, you'll see this deeper analysis in the forms. And so we just show it to you to let you know that this is just a different way that we are thinking, how we're moving, how we're measuring ourselves, while the process and system itself is still imperfect and we have rooms for improvement. I'm very excited that through the PMAT teams that we have created that we will work on this year long and not just wait to do this every 2 years. And finally, I'm excited to share that all of our information and presentations is on the Open Data Portal. So I know Commissioner Matacasile will talk about our budget book being a moral document, but it also has an online feel and fluff to it as well. And so if technology allows, when our departments and service teams present, you'll actually be able to see their measures on the portal, and we'll actually be able to share some open data stories as well. And I also want to highlight the open data portal and that the county board invested in this in the last biennial, and you are seeing the results of it, right? We talked a lot about outcomes and measures and results. You see it in the COVID dashboard from week to week. You're seeing more information and data. So I just want to commend and thank the county board for your investment in not only the technology, but also our open data coordinator, Christine Grill, and Zachary Hilton, who've been really fabulous in this process throughout. And then that concludes my presentation. And before I conclude that, I do just want to, again, give accolades to the budget core team. As you guys mentioned, Ryan O'Connor, County Manager O'Connor, our new CFO, Deshani Dye, who has left, but also Renee, who's really stepped in. It should be noted, not only did they adjust to create this process in an abbreviated timeline, but also each one of us serves on the incident management team as well. So we are doing double and triple duty, and it's just been really great to work with this fabulous team and to see this happen seamlessly. I also want to highlight 2 departments that were very key to this process as well. Our chief clerk and our county manager's admin team, the entire office. We couldn't have done this without them, and getting your budget books and compiled and printed. And also our communications department. They were really fabulous in helping us with our presentations, navigating, working through the open data portal and so forth. They often don't get recognized and often overlooked, but they were a huge part in this overall process. With that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
And thank you very much. I truly appreciate the presentation that you've shared with us, and looking online and seeing our community indicators and understanding the story behind the story is something that we will all have the opportunity to do as we move forward. Just so much appreciation for the work you've done to identify what our work is, how much work we do, but even more importantly, pressing forward toward that last question of, is anybody better off? Because that, in the end, is truly what we are working to accomplish, making certain to protect the health and well-being of our community, to grow wealth and prosperity together. I'm looking at our hands, and it's certainly clear that the sharing that you have provided for us today is understood by all. I have no questions at this point. I'm going to just check in. And of course, as I do, there is a hand raised. And so I will call on Commissioner McGuire for a question. Thank you.
Commissioner, we cannot hear you.
I can hear the commissioner, and that's strange, but let's check again. Commissioner McGuire. And now I cannot. This is very... So I can hear you. Can she be heard in the courtroom?
No, Madam Chair, could you just please repeat her question to the policy director, and then we'll work on that after the question.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Commissioner McGuire. I'll repeat your question. Thank you very much. So again, Commissioner McGuire has shared that the presentation was clear. She is thanking all on the team very much for the work that has been done and reserving deeper questions as the service team presentations come forward. Looking again and wanting to thank you very, very much, Director Tolzman, for your work, for your team, for this foundation presentation, as we move on then to the balance of the morning and to hear all of the presentations before us. Thank you very, very much. So checking in again, I know that we have a next presentation coming forward, and just lost my sheet.
Madam Chair.
Figure out, thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we have the County Assessor, Luis Rosario, coming up to present to you all next.
Thank you so much.
And so as we pull up the presentation here right now, I would just add, we will have the assessor followed by our auditor treasurer, and then we will conclude with a presentation from finance that relates to our, I want to get the title correct, the fund balance report is what I want to say, financial overview and fund balance report. Take it away, Luis.
Good morning.
Thank you very much, Luis.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Luis Rosario, County Assessor. Thank you so much for having me come in to give you this market update. I'll try to do a real quick overview of the real estate market, what went into the 2020 assessment for taxes payable in 2021. The assessment is based on 2019 sales and 2019 market data. It's pre-COVID, and as of January 2nd, the data showed another strong assessment year and all property types going up. I will also go over how the real estate market is reacting today and the challenges it faces due to the pandemic and the resulting economic disruption. So the historical total value spreadsheet shows that we're at an all-time high in our assessment at $60.4 billion. That's 10.7 billion from that 2007 high point. I do want to point out that there's a significant difference between the 2007 recession and where we're at today. 2007 recession was brought on by the subprime mortgage crisis and lax lending standards that led to the collapse of the mortgages industry, resulting in significant financial imbalance. It took 12 years for us to reach a new assessment, which happened in 2017. However, we still have some neighborhoods in St. Paul that still today, property values have not fully recovered from the effect of the 2007 Great Recession. The recession we're in now was caused by a public health crisis, obviously COVID. And many experts in the real estate industry feel the real estate was booming before the pandemic hit. The strength of the market will help it withstand the COVID-related challenges it faces. I personally think that there are certain properties that types that are going to see significant effects from the results of this current recession. So as I mentioned, we still have some municipalities, planning districts that have not fully recovered from 2007. This map compares the 2007 residential median to the 2020 median values. And so you can see areas in red and pink still have not fully recovered. North End still has 6.8% to recover, and Dayton's Bluff 6.1%. And then you have some other neighborhoods that are doing very, very well, such as Highland, McGroveland, Arden Hills, Mounds View, are up over 20% from that 2007 peak. So many of these areas and these jurisdictions in red and pink are in St. Paul, and they're located in areas of concentrated poverty. So many of these property owners may not have felt the effect of the strong economy we've had in the last 5 years, and they weren't able to take advantage of the historically low interest rates or even refinance because they still don't have enough equity in their homes. Also, these areas in concentrated poverty are seeing the highest % increase in values in the last 5 years because of affordable housing, good affordable housing stock. Last year, St. Paul was one of the only few major cities in the metro with median values under $200,000. So many of the property owners are very relieved to see their values finally bouncing back, but are very concerned with the increase in property taxes. The 2020 assessments, looking at how values changed by class and then broken down by the city of St. Paul, suburb, countywide, the aggregate change, overall countywide we're up 8.1%. And you can see the details for the suburb and city above. Residential is at 5.3%, commercial at 7.7%, industrial had a strong year at 14%, and apartments, again, really, really strong at 21%. The residential and apartments are pretty uniform between the suburbs and the city, and with the city coming in a little higher on both commercial and industrial. So these value change will result in a shift in taxes due to the increase primarily of apartments, and Chris Samuel is going to discuss and illustrate this in his presentation next. New development in the county, Lions Field Superblock proceeding with the apartment plan right now. There's some pause and delay on the hotel and mega theater because of the economic downturn. As you know, 85% of hotel workers are still unemployed. Many of developments that appeared to be proceeding as scheduled. Downtown St. Paul, the Osborne 370 is now 85% leased with space from tech companies. The Highland Bridge is starting to sell their residential homes, and that's moving on nicely. Numerous new apartment projects throughout the county and future redevelopment, initial marketing, and planning phases. Tax court petition trends is moving up, which is typical when values are rising. We have a total of 1,109 petitions in-house. The number of new paid 2020 petition filings increased to 742, which is slightly up from 725 filed for payable 2019. New filings cover 9.4% of the 2019 paid 2020 assessed value. Total values of petition parcels for paid 2020 is $5.31 billion. That's up 4.3 from 2019. My office has resolved 669 petitions with a total value reduction of $562 million in calendar year 2019. These tax reductions in recent years have been within budget levels and are projected to continue to be within budget levels. So Ramsey County's aggregate estimated market value at an all-time high of $60.4 billion. Again, the values were set as of January 2nd, pre-COVID. Some of the areas of concentrated poverty have not fully recovered from the 2007 recession. Many areas are seeing the highest increases in 2020 due to affordable housing stock. The residential market is still very strong. So as of just this month, it's shown a 5% increase on the residential market countywide, and that's really due to the low supply of homes and the 50-year low rate interest rate. It's under 3%, and this is really widening the affordability gap due to the current unemployment. Our unemployment is much higher now than it was a year ago. Development cautiously continues throughout Ramsey County, and as we look at the economic outlook and the many unknowns that may affect the real estate market on both the residential and the commercial side for the 2021 assessment, we have an upcoming election, presidential election. We have a COVID relief bill. We have expanded federal benefits, eviction protection, mortgage relief. So looking at office from a historical standpoint, the office market is still healthy, relatively stable, vacancy rates at levels not considered troubling. Absorption is staying flat though, meaning that very few empty spaces are getting filled, and sales activity is virtually at a standstill still, which is, it's actually good because a lot of people were predicting that the office sales are going to be heavily discounted or there's going to be fire sales. However, it's been widely reported that companies may need less office space in the future since Many have discovered that their employees are still efficient and productive working from home. So this means that the flexibility will be key for office tenants and landlords to work out what companies' office space needs to be in the next 6 to 12 months. Retail, it's been very challenging several months for retail properties, from the mandated shutdown of properties to the staggered reopening. It's been tough, but generally markets seem to be holding on. Certainly grocery stores, grocery anchors, the big anchor boxes, the Targets are doing well, but there has been many businesses that have closures. Reports of tenants unable to pay rent. In particular, many restaurants have been forced to close. Those that have hung on have often had to set up rent repayment plans for their building owners at lower rates. And with the winter months ahead, the use of outdoor seating will be gone, and the reliability of curbside is going to be really need to pick up. So we need to really support our restaurants and our small retail businesses right now. Apartments. So despite what's going on with the pandemic, Ramsey County's apartment market remains resilient. New apartment continues and vacancy rates remain stable at low levels. However, there are reports that rents have come down, which could impact the valuation at some point. The housing shortage has not disappeared, as I said earlier, so this alone should allow the apartment market to continue to be strong. Strong activity, sales activity has decreased, but what has sold and what we've seen in the office is indicating values are stabilized and at high levels. And finally, industrial. This is the market segment with the fewest question marks. It continues to show strength, which makes it, with much of it is due to the continued growth of e-commerce and the need for warehouse distribution space. At large scale, any large-scale retailer who hopes to succeed in the coming years knows that a robust e-commerce operation is necessary. So this bodes well for the industry, and the pandemic has just further straightened this development. So, commissioners, I do remain optimistic that we'll get through this, but it's going to require, all of us to follow the CDC guidelines to get this pandemic under control. It's going to require patience, cooperation, and we need to really support our local restaurants and small retailers and our residents. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Luis. We really appreciate your presentation and overview. And most certainly your emphasis that we cannot recover economically without recovering through the health aspects of this pandemic. I'm looking for questions, and I do see Commissioner McDonough's hand raised. Commissioner.
Yep, thanks, Chair Carter. And Luis, you may not be able to answer this, and it may be, I think it's probably connected to a number of areas, but do we have any sense on what the potential for when the eviction protection goes away, how big that cliff may potentially be? I mean, we're supporting with our emergency grant investment with CARE dollars. I don't have a good sense of how much people are accessing that and we're keeping them afloat. But I get a sense, I think, for mortgages, most mortgage companies had some type of forbearance for people in trouble with their mortgage payments, which just pushes their mortgage out longer, but doesn't necessarily jeopardize them in losing their house. But have we started to get a sense of what kind of cliff is out there once some of these supports go away?
Commissioner McDonough, I'm not really sure what that answer is, but I know that my sense is that there are just residents just hanging on, and they need that support to continue on. But I don't know if County Manager.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, I will do some follow-up on seeing if we can get any specific numbers around that and bring it back for our COVID update at our next meeting. What I would say on the expenditure side, and this is consistent with Hennepin County as well, we've been in weekly dialogue on this, very little money has actually been spent yet from the counties because the eviction moratorium has been expended. We're continuing to be prepared to respond in the moment, and we have a lot of families that have done like the pre-work on the application side. Director Curry gave an update to me about a week ago on that. I'll bring back more precise numbers though in the weeks ahead about the size, but we are all very concerned.
Thank you very much. And so we still really appreciate the presentation we just had and know that we have 2 more in this session to follow. I do not have hands, and so with great thanks to Luis Rosario, I am going to call on our county auditor for a presentation on trends that are affecting the 2021 property taxes in Ramsey County. And I understand that Chris Samuel, Auditor Treasurer, is going to be joining us by Zoom. Turn to the County Manager for any comments prior to Chris's presentation.
I'll go right to Chris, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, hopefully you can hear me.
Thank you.
Good morning. And I'm Chris Samuel, the Ramsey County Auditor Treasurer, and thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about trends affecting 2021 property taxes in Ramsey County. As you're well aware, there are a number of factors that impact property taxes. And so the true impact to property owners really will not, individual property owners will really not be seen until proposed property taxes go out, notices go out in November. But at this point, there are some indicators that we can look at that gives us an idea of what those trends are. And we've looked at some of those patterns in the past. I have a question. Great, thank you, Luis. If you could move on to the next page, please. I'm going to cover some of those items in the key takeaways, and we're going to include an update on property tax collections this year, because I know that's an item of concern for the commissioners. And then we're going to look at impacts on median valued homes, commercial and apartment properties. We will also take a look at impacts by St. Paul Planning District, as well as on single family homes by city and school district. And then we will also take a look at how market values have increased for residential, commercial, and apartment property, so we can get some idea as to how many properties will likely be impacted more significantly by property tax shifts that we're going to be seeing. And then there is additional information that's also included in the appendix. Next slide. As County Assessor Rosario has already shared, market values continue to go up significantly in that we are now at an all-time high. And that is going to make this whole concept of tax shifts that much more important. I do want to remind that market values going up do not generate any additional property taxes for the governmental agencies. The only way for the governmental agencies to get additional dollars is for them to increase levies. And as County Manager O'Connor has already mentioned, for the county, the county is looking at no increase in levy. We have also heard that the mayor of St. Paul is also projecting no change in the levy for the city of St. Paul. What that means then is that property tax owners will still, some property owners will still be seeing increases and some will be seeing decreases in property taxes. And this is the result of tax shifts because their market value is changing at different rates. So some properties because their market values are going up more significantly, are a larger portion of the tax base and therefore seeing a larger share of the property taxes. And others have values that are decreasing or increasing at a slower rate than others, and those properties will be seeing property tax decreases. And this whole concept of tax shifts is one that's difficult to explain, but it does explain why we will be seeing tax increases and tax decreases for property owners, even though the amount of money that's being requested from property taxes is not changing. And these changes do appear on proposed notices for the individual government agencies. So it does appear that those individual governmental agencies are increasing taxes or decreasing taxes. And that is happening for that individual property. But overall, as we have seen, the county is not increasing its request from property tax owners. So in looking at those properties that are more likely to see increases. Market values are increasing in double digits for 20% of the homes, 79% of apartments, and 42% of commercial industrial property. So we would expect then to see more significant shifts to apartments and then also to commercial properties and to those homes that are seeing higher increases in value. I do want to point out with apartments, part of what this does, and this goes to Commissioner McDonough's point about affordability and affordability on the rental side, the fact that apartment values are going up so significantly and the tax shifts are actually going to shift taxes to those apartments to the extent that the owners of those apartments pass along those increases in the form of increased rents, that will make rental housing less affordable. There are a number of neighborhoods, as noted there in the city of St. Paul, that are seeing higher increases this year. Gem Lake in the suburbs. I will point out that Thomas Dale neighborhood, which has been seeing double-digit increases for a number of years, is much more moderate this year, which is probably a relief for taxpayers there. As County Assessor Rosario has already mentioned, these values were established as of January 2nd, but there's nothing to indicate at this point that the pandemic and any associated economic downturn is going to be in values, that we are seeing continued increased values because of the low supply, high demand, and low interest rates, although commercial is probably more of a question mark. Next slide. When we went into the first half property tax collections, it was very soon after the onset of COVID-19. And so the question was, would property tax payers be in a position to make payment, and how comfortable would they be given the uncertainty with finances in making those payments? And what we have seen is that property tax collections are actually coming in very well and comparable to 2019. And this is consistent with what we've seen in prior recessions, where property tax collections is a very reliable and dependable source of revenue that local governments are very dependent on. And so what we're seeing then is that they provided a deferral for certain properties until July 15th. But as of July 29th, we were actually almost $600 million in the bank that has subsequently been dispersed to all the governmental agencies. And so we are seeing healthy property tax collections comparable to what we had in 2019. There is a question as owners of property continue to see reduced business or business closures as to whether that will actually impact the collection rates in the second half. So that is an open question at this point, but looking at prior recessions, property taxes have still come in at a very high level. Next slide. Most of those properties that were eligible for the deferment had paid the property taxes in full for the first half by July 29th. So 95% of the homesteads had paid, about 90% of the commercial, industrial, and residential non-homesteads that were eligible for the deferment had paid in full by July 29th. There were about 3,800 parcels that have made no payments yet this year. That is not necessarily a large number relative to what we've seen in prior years. So it's up some, but it is in many respects comparable to what we have seen in prior years. It was interesting that of this 3,800, about 2/3 to 3/4 of those properties were properties that already had exhibited signs of distress prior to COVID. So they either had delinquent taxes or they had late payments in 2019. And so part of what this is showing us is there were a number of people in financial distress prior to COVID. And what this is doing is pushing them closer to the edge or over the edge in terms of the property tax side of the equation. We also have a little over 1,300 parcels that have made partial payments and are not yet fully paid for first half. So we had suggested to the taxpayers that partial payment was an option, and there are a number of taxpayers that have been taking us up on that. Next slide. For Black, Indigenous, and people of color, those households have actually been hit hard by COVID-19, and that's actually been covered from the health aspect and other factors in our prior discussions. And part of what I'd like to talk about today is what that's doing in terms of the potential in the rental market. And this may get to Commissioner McDonough's question a little bit in terms of what we're seeing in terms of impacts. As we've seen and looked at last year, we saw that there was a big racial disparity in home ownership, where white households own most of the homes, single-family homes in the county, and that BIPOC populations are much more likely to rent in terms of supplying their housing. We also talked last year about affordable housing and the gap in the number of needed units to meet the need, especially for our low-income residents. This year, we want to focus on what's happening with our rental housing. And as kind of the reverse part of that equation, our BIPOC households are much more reliant on rental housing. And they're also much more likely to have experienced job loss than white households in this COVID-19 situation. The impact can actually be masked a bit when we take a look at property tax collections. Property tax collections are not a good indicator of the level of financial distress in this area, because in many cases, the owners of the property are making payments of those property taxes to protect their interest, whether it be the bank in the case of escrow properties, or whether it be the owner in the case of non-escrow properties. To protect their interest, they're making payments even though they may not be getting rents or maybe getting reduced rents as part of their collections. And so consequently, we don't really see the impact or the financial distress to this group of populations that has been impacted greatly by job loss. As Commissioner McDonough mentioned, the moratorium on evictions masks those impacts, as does the moratorium on mortgage foreclosures. And it is a big question what happens when those moratoriums end, as to how many folks we are going to see that are going to be impacted as a result of that. The direct housing relief that's coming through the emergency assistance and the emergency general assistance programs will definitely help in the short term, but once those moratoriums on evictions and foreclosures end, and if our BIPOC families are not back to work, we certainly are going to see continued issues over the next several years, in all likelihood, dealing with rental housing and rental housing impacts. We do need to, when we're looking at property tax relief, make sure that any benefits are passing through to those renters as part of the process, because benefiting just the owner in that process won't necessarily benefit the renters that are the group most impacted by what we're seeing here with COVID-19. Next slide.
And as we're moving to the next slide, I do see Commissioner Reinhardt's hand up, and we'll give her an opportunity to ask her question or make comment here. Commissioner?
And actually, I could wait until the end. Why don't we do that?
Thank you. We'll go ahead.
Completed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the next slide here, what we are looking at is what's happening in terms of joblessness as a result of COVID-19. And I will ask if you can see the slide at this point.
There you go. You got it up, Chris.
Great, thank you. So Black workers are 2.5 times more likely to be jobless than white workers as a result of COVID-19. And what we're doing here is taking a look at unemployment claims that have been filed since COVID started, compared against the total Ramsey County labor force by race. And we can see that over 50% of Black workers have filed unemployment claims versus 22% for white families, 38% for white workers. In talking with Director Becker, she also pointed out that these numbers on unemployment likely understate the number of jobless in the market, in that we have populations that are distrustful of government and are likely not to file unemployment claims. And so consequently, these numbers are very high and very scary in the process, but they are likely higher in terms of the impact for our BIPOC populations because certain subgroups are likely not to file for unemployment. Overall, those that have lost jobs are slightly more likely to be female, age 34 or younger, and to not have a college degree. Next slide. And this is a reverse of the slide we looked at last year, where we're now looking at a breakdown of housing by race, but focusing on rental as opposed to home ownership, and showing that Black families or households are much more likely to depend on rental housing, whereas white families less so. And consequently, as we're talking about property tax shifts going to apartments and the potential for increased rents in conjunction with that and passed along costs, it's going to hit these populations that are more likely to have experienced job loss and be experiencing financial difficulty. Next slide. Some good information. We have more money coming from the fiscal disparities pool, almost $1.7 million for the county. The City of St. Paul and School District, our St. Paul School District will also be getting more money. This is the equivalent in terms of impact to our local property taxes as a tax levy reduction, in that it shifts property taxes from local properties to the commercial industrial property in the 7-county metro. So it is a shift from local to metro-wide on commercial industrial, and does lower taxes then for local taxpayers. Next slide. This is a median, illustrates what's happening on a median valued home in the city of Roseville. Median value of $280,600, going up 3.2% from last year. You can see on the very bottom what we're assuming in terms of levy increases. So we're assuming no changes in levy at this point, with the exception of the regional rail. And in the upper left-hand side, you can see the increases due to tax shift. So the fact that we have additional fiscal disparity dollars available reduces the taxes on this property by $7. Because this is a homestead property, and as market values go up, there's less of a homestead benefit. That actually increases property taxes on this home by $9. And the other shifts, so all the other market value changes that are occurring, actually reduce the taxes by $219. So our starting point is a $217 decrease in property taxes due to tax shifts on this median valued home in Roseville. We're looking at a $7 increase in regional rail, and then off to the right, you can see what would actually appear on the proposed property tax notice, which combines the impact of both the tax shifts and the levy increases for a net difference of a $210 reduction, or 5.4% on this median valued home. Next slide. Similar information here on a median valued home in St. Paul, assuming an 8% increase in estimated market value up to $215,800. And you can see here that the reduction in tax shifts is $37 reduction as a starting point. We're looking at $32 after including the levy increase for regional rail, or a 1.1% reduction. Next slide. And here we're showing impacts on a commercial property in St. Paul that has a 4.9% increase in estimated market value. This property also benefits from the gain in fiscal disparities, so a $74 reduction for that. Is also benefiting from shifts, in that the increase on this median is less than we've been seeing on increases in market values for other properties. So tax shifts are actually reducing this by $225. So net $282 reduction, or 1.8%. Next slide. We have not shown apartment in the past, but wanted to this year to emphasize the other side of the shift. And here you can see there is a reduction due to the gain in fiscal disparities, but because the median valued apartment in St. Paul, which is increasing 16.6% from prior year, is increasing more significantly than other market values throughout the county. You can see as a result of tax shifts, there is actually an increase in taxes on this median valued apartment of $1,042, which, after taking into account the reduction due to fiscal disparities, gives us an increase due to tax shifts of $894, net $928, or 5.2%. And I do want to call out, when we're talking about medians, what median means is that half of the values are above that and half the values are below that. So as we'll see in a moment, there certainly are properties that are seeing increases greater than the 16.6% increase in the area of apartments. Next slide. Looking at information by St. Paul Planning District, the areas that are seeing the largest increases were Sunray, Battle Creek, Highland, and what you're seeing, though, is much more moderate growth in terms of what's happening with the market values this year. And over on the far right-hand side, then, when you translate that into what are the expected tax increases at this point, we actually have 12 out of the 17 areas that are the planning districts that have projected property tax reductions at this point, based on the no change in levy and based on the market values that are in place there, with one area also being at 0 and one being slightly above that. So very moderate increases for those areas that are seeing increases, and decreases across much of the range for residential property in the city of St. Paul based on median values. Next slide. And here we look at information based on city school district combination throughout the county. Again, assuming no changes in levies except for the regional rail. You can see on the left-hand side much more moderate growth in terms of increases in market values for median properties, Gem Lake being the largest at 8.1, St. Paul at 8.0. On the far right-hand side, then, you can see what we're projecting in terms of property tax changes then at this point on those median valued properties, which are almost universally decreases, and the level of the decrease depends on the level of fiscal disparities as well as the tax shifts for overlapping jurisdictions like the county and school district for different rates of market value growth across the county. Next slide. Looking at increases in market value on single family homes, the largest group is actually in that 0 to 10% range. For those that are increasing in the 10 to 20% range and above, those are properties that are likely to see more significant property tax increases. As we've already seen, a number of the median homes were following in that 0 to 10% range, and those properties were still getting projected decreases. So in that 0 to 10% range, we're likely to see decreases or moderate increases at the upper end of that 10% range, with those that are above that range likely seeing larger increases as a result of tax shifts. Next slide. Whereas with apartments, we're looking at most of the apartments falling in that 10 to 20% range, with a significant number increasing more than that. And so these are the properties that are most likely then to be seeing more significant increases in property tax. And as we've already mentioned, that will certainly or could have an impact on our renters, which are those most in financial distress. And next slide. Commercial industrial is much more scattered in terms of the impact, but again, those that are at the higher end of the scale, the 10 to 20, 20 to 30 and above, those are properties that are much more likely to see significant or more significant increases in property taxes as a result of tax shifts. There is additional information in the appendices, which I will not go into, and at this point I would stand for any questions on property tax trends and impacts.
Thank you very much. Calling on Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to comment that going back to the work that was done through our property tax advisory work group to the policy advisory action team, and then it actually shared statewide through the Association of Minnesota Counties to assist with the beginning of this year and the first payment that was made. I think that it's important to understand that as we are developing things and looking at different aspects of this, we acknowledged at that time that the November, or when the last half of the property taxes were due, was likely going to be more difficult for people. We also acknowledged at that time that renters were going to be disproportionately impacted, and of course that is exactly what is happening. And we asked for legislative help with that. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood that when we put forward things like this, it's not that we want to be right and that throngs of people will come in and take advantage of it. But for those that did, and that's not what happened, obviously, and that's good news. We still don't know what's ahead of us quite yet. But I think that it's important to note that for those people that did take advantage of it, it was a life changer probably. The stress of trying to figure out what to do and have something in April when they just did not have the money because it was so close to when COVID hit. So I just want to point that out. It's not about trying to make sure that we're getting everything for everybody, but for those that needed it, it was incredibly important. And I know that Chris and I and others probably heard a lot of gratitude from people that said this made a difference in our lives. So I would also point out that we are looking at reconvening the group, if for nothing else, to give an update on what happened in the legislative session and also what we need to look at for the upcoming payment schedule that will come out. So you can stay tuned for that, but we are coming back and fulfilling what we said we needed to do, and that was get through the first half and then come back and see what happened in the legislature, and then also what do we need to do or not do for this next cycle. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Chris. Amazing work from our staff.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Back to you, Chris.
At this point, I'm standing for any questions.
Please do.
I know.
We can't hear Commissioner McGuire.
And thank you, Commissioner McGuire, both for thanking Chris on behalf of all of us and also testing your mic. We really appreciate the presentation, Chris. I have no further questions coming from the board at this time. Simply the reiteration from all of us of thanks for your work of sharing with us the impacts and the trends that are affecting our property taxes and the various ways in which we will see those play out probably during this upcoming period. I know that we have a next presentation coming also regarding our financial overview. I'll just check in with the county manager prior to that presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be our final presentation to bring us home. It'll be our Chief Financial Officer, Alex Kutza, and Deputy Director of Finance, Renee Vogt.
Great. Thank you very much. Alex and Renee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. As Ryan mentioned, my name is Alex Kutza. I get to be the new CFO still. I'd like to reserve that title for my first year. I'm going to hand it over right away to Renee Vogt, who is the Deputy Director and is going to walk us through how we ended 2019, the 2019 fund balance report, and then I'll take it back over to talk about some challenges facing us today and opportunities that we'll find in this crisis.
Thank you, Alex. Chair Carter and Commissioners, my name is Renee Vogt. I have served as the Deputy Director for Ramsey County since November of 2019. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come today and present the fund balance report. Each year, the fund balance report is presented to the board, and it is in your packets and it will be available online. There's details for each fund, but the majority of the biggest part of the fund is the general fund. That's where most of the activity happens, and that will be the focus of the presentation today. So as you can tell, the general fund balance remained strong in 2019. It had actually increased by 8.8% or 8.8 million over 2018. There are many factors that affect the fluctuation of the fund balance. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board made some changes in 2019, and the way we report Vanda Sports Center in 2019 was another area that affected the fund balance change. In 2018, we had very strong investment income, and that continued in 2019. Another area that we want to focus on for the fund balance is the unassigned portion of the general fund. The unassigned portion decreased by 31.8 million. The driving factor behind this decrease was due to the timing of revenue recognition from federal and state agencies for our roads and bridges. Most of this revenue will be recognized and has already been receipted by Ramsey County during 2020 or 2020. The outstanding fund balance, or the outstanding debt for Ramsey County, decreased by 8.3 million in 2019, which supports the lower debt burden that the county holds. On a very positive note, our net position for Ramsey County increased by 87.2%. The major influence behind this increase is the transit and transportation tax and the investment in capital projects. During 2019, our transit and transportation fund balance doubled from what it was in 2018. So that allows us to continue and give us the opportunity to improve our transit operations. Also, during 2019, our investment income, as I said, has increased, and that also doubled from 2018. Maintaining a strong net position for Ramsey County is very important for our organization to continue and meet our goals. And the market value for Ramsey County also increased 3.5 billion from 2018 to 19. And that is a result of a strong economy. We have independent organizations looking at Ramsey County, and as in the past, we have been recognized with multiple awards. One of them is receiving the AAA bond rating again. And these organizations that issued the AAA bond rating wanted to make special note. They favorably commented regarding the strong management of Ramsey County and the stable operations, healthy reserves, low debt burden, and strong budgeting practices. Each year, the government's Financial Officers Association also awards Ramsey County with many awards. We've received the Comprehensive Financial Reporting Award again, the PAFR report, which is the Popular Financial Annual Report, and for the budget presentation. We've recently completed the audit for 2019, And the state auditors have given us an unmodified, which is a clean audit opinion again for 2019. This slide shows the complexity of the Ramsey County funds. There's 38 funds that we report on, which you can see the details of where all the fund balances are in your reports. But I'm not going to talk a lot about it. I just wanted to show you the complexity and that the general fund is our largest fund. The final portion of my presentation today is talking about the general fund balance policy. The general fund calls for maintaining an unrestricted fund balance of no more than 50% of the current year's revenues, current year's expenditures, or the subsequent year's budget. The other portion of the general fund balance policy is that we should maintain at least 2 months reserve for expenses. As you are aware, we rely heavily on property taxes, and with the timing of when the property taxes are received by Ramsey County, it's important that we have a cash flow that can sustain us through every single month. At the end of 2019, we had almost 4 months of unassigned fund balance, which is well above the policy. And since our unassigned fund balance is strong, it provides $74.3 million over the required policy amount. This allows us the ability to use fund balance in order to meet current demands. And I will turn it back over to Alex.
Okay, thank you, Renee. So as you can see from what Renee presented, we came out of 2019 in a very good financial position. I took a little time over the last couple of days to watch Lee's budget presentation last year, and he was amazing because he actually said that it was just a matter of time before there would be an economic downturn that would require resiliency and flexibility in our work. And now we are here, requiring flexibility and resiliency in our work. So since March of 2020, we have experienced a pandemic, an economic downturn like nothing any of us have seen in our lifetimes, civil unrest due to the killing of George Floyd, and all of this is having a significant impact on our residents, employees, and the entire community. So luckily, as Ryan has mentioned and other speakers have mentioned, Ramsey County has been saving. You just saw the rainy day fund that Renee mentioned. And you have healthy reserves and balances, and we finished 2019 in a really good position. That means that today's the rainy day, and it's time to start talking about what that looks like for Ramsey County, both in 21 and moving forward. So some things I think about right now, considerations as we're looking at 2020 as a much different year than what you heard from Renee from 2019. What is the effect on our residents? What is the effect on our county revenue? As Chris and Luis mentioned, there is a big impact for property taxes and other revenues that come into the county. The unemployment rate is much higher than it was last March. It was 3%. The newest Ramsey County from the Fed is 10% from June. There's the effect of the civil unrest on our entire community. As others have mentioned, federal and state support for our programs and the presidential election that's upcoming. In addition, there's lots of needs in our community, as have been mentioned today, with evictions and some food insecurity that we are all working to respond to in real time. So that's kind of where we are today. And I always believe, and someone I used to work with always said, never waste a good crisis. There are opportunities in crisis. Not that it's good, but it's a moment to reflect. And luckily, here in Ramsey County, part of the reason I took this position and part of the reason it was such an attractive job is because you've spent so much time as a board and as the leadership of this county to think about what is your mission, What is your vision? And what are the core services that are important to the county? And now that guides the work as we go into 21 and beyond. So I think part of when we looked at 21, and Ryan talked about this, we focused on our strategic initiatives and maintaining those. But we're also, I'm going to just ask for you to be patient with us in ways that we're going to need flexibility and we're going to need to pivot because none of us know what's going to happen throughout the next year. So things that I think about, we need to continue and increase community engagement activities. We need to listen to the community, tell us what they need and how to respond to that. And we also need to think short-term and long-term. There's short-term things that we are doing and then how that impacts longer term. So again, taking a hard look as we look at this budget, I think of this as a shorter term budget. What are we doing right now? And looking at the budget and the services we need to provide and how we use technology in different ways to improve our work and maybe create some efficiencies. The racial equity work that I mentioned and the community engagement, and then turning to 22 and 23 and what is sustainable going forward. As someone mentioned earlier, coming down to a zero, that means we didn't raise the taxes, which then if we do raise the taxes in the future, which we'll have to do, it's on a lower base. So that's always something we want to think about as you build the base into the budget in the future. I'm also thinking about some of the work that's been mentioned. We've been able to invest in areas with the CARES Act money that we haven't been able to do in the past, such as housing. We're doing new things, providing masks, we're providing housing, we're providing technology backpacks. All of these things are different than what we've done before, and learning from that, strategically redesigning things and moving forward in ways that help our community and respond to where we are today in terms of the pandemic and the economic downturn. So I would be remiss if I didn't spend a little time talking about what risks there are going into 21, 22, and 23. Things that I think we need to be aware of and coming back, and some of these have been mentioned already today. There is new demand for new and increased programs and services in key areas. We've held many of those harmless, but we don't know where additional demand will come throughout the next year as this pandemic and economic downturn continue. On the expenditure side, there are more people coming into our programs, and there are different families that maybe have never interacted with our programs previously, and we need to think through that and how we serve those folks. Many people have mentioned today, so I won't go into it, but the reliability of our revenues. We have the intergovernmental revenues. Where is the federal government going to go? Where is the state going to go? Our fee-based programs, the property tax implications, we just don't know yet. So we will continue to have that dialogue, continue to come back to the board and the leadership and figure out how we respond to that in real time. But really where I wanted to land was kind of where Renee finished her presentation, is that focusing on the strategic priorities, following the direction that's already been set by this board and by this leadership during these unprecedented times is really key. And when you do that and you have the rainy day fund, as Renee mentioned, $74.3 million over the required amount that was set by the policy of this board. And this budget asks for $2.8 million of that money to use one time as we think through how we get to 22 and 23. To me, that's very fiscally solid and prudent. And it's the right time to do that and look forward to how we move into the next phase of the new reality that we're living in. So with that, I have to thank my team, having only been here 6 months. Renee Vogt, my deputy, who you saw, has been so helpful and stepped in places that I don't think she ever anticipated when she took that job last November. Dushani Dai, who has left to be the great CFO of Minneapolis, but couldn't have gotten this budget without her. The budget analyst team, who some of are here in the audience and some are at home watching, who've done a lot of work to get this budget out in a year that they weren't necessarily supposed to produce a budget like this. So thank you for that. Elizabeth and Ryan for helping me through my first budget presentation, and to all of you for being patient with me through the budget walkthroughs and different things we've done. So feel free to reach out anytime. The links are here where you can see our comprehensive annual financial report, the ever popular annual financial report that everybody loves. I mean, if you're bored at night, I would highly suggest it. the Budget and Finance webpage and the Open Data Portal with much information. With that, I can answer any questions that you have, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Alex. We're really thankful for the presentation and the information that you've shared with us. Appreciate that you are absolutely the right person at the right time for us here in Ramsey County. We're thankful that you've joined us, that you've learned from the past, benefited perhaps from work that has been done, but are absolutely leaning into our future and the transformative work we're doing. I will call upon Commissioner Reinhardt and then Commissioner McDonough.
Madam Chair, I would like to note, I believe that what was announced earlier was, again, I think this would be for the 20th year in a row, or maybe it's the 19th year in a row, that both Standard & Poor's and Moody's has granted us the AAA bond rating. So I think that that is the newest information. We should check with Alex on that. But I wanted to, and I know the slide was up, and I know that we're running out, well, we've run out of time, but I do want to really comment on this because it's not just about the AAA bond rating and touting that, but it's why. And that is the ratings agency commented very favorably on the county's very strong management, stable operations and healthy reserves, low debt burden, and strong budgeting practices, and the awards that we win for that as well. I was hoping to wrap it up here, but I do want to double check to make sure that I understood that correctly, that this is the newest information on, once again, earning the AAA bond rating for 2019.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, that's correct. It's been since 2001, and that is the 19th year in a row.
That is pretty amazing, and it's just a lot of hard work on behalf of, or by this board and all of the staff that have put these documents together. You know, we've kind of gotten used to it. If it ever doesn't happen, we'll probably just be very upset. But the fact is, we've put ourselves in a very strong position, and it's because of the work of people like you and before you, Lee, and others, but and just everybody working together on this. And it's quite an accomplishment. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Reinhardt. Commissioner McDonough.
Thanks, Chair Carter. And I know we're running late and folks wanted to move on, but I got a quick question and we could take this deeper at a later time. But I'm going to reference slide 6, the complexity of our funds. That was referenced in the presentation. And I know there was a time where this was even much more complex, and we had a goal to really start eliminating these little pockets of money all over the county that maybe didn't drive transparency and accountability. And so my question to you, Alex, is this, when we get rated, when we get these awards, does this slide come up as an issue of, we got more work to do in eliminating, because especially I look at the other governmental funds and, a lot of our departments have funds. I understand the enterprise funds and the internal service funds, but would you say this is driving transparency and accountability with this complexity, or do we got more work to do in eliminating some of these little pots of money around the county?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. I'm going to hand it over to Renee because she actually speaks to them and does more of this work, and she can answer that question, I think.
The complexity of the funds, I believe there may be some adjustments we can make, but it is nice to have the funds to show the transparencies and to show the different types of work and activities that the county is involved in. Last year, during 2019, as I said before, we moved Vanda Sports Center, which used to be an enterprise fund, into the general fund. So now all of the information that we have for Parks and Rec is reported in the same manner as the rest of the activities. We also did the multimodal planning, and we moved that into the general fund. So when we look at regional rail, it's really restricted just the regional rail activities, and we just have the charges going in there that are responsible by the regional rail. So I think they're cleaner, and I like the way they're set up for the transparencies so that when people are looking at this, they can easily understand what activities are involved in the funds we're using.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, I'll just add one piece from the management side of the funds. I mean, I think you got the accounting piece. I think an ongoing conversation we should have throughout the budget process remains less on tracking the dollars and more on the one county vision and how we implement that vision across funds, and do funds ever impede that work? And at times in the past, I think it seems that they have, right? When we gave too much discretion to individual areas to spend and do things kind of because that money was there. And that's a conversation we should continue through this entire budget process.
So thank you.
I appreciate that, Ryan, your last comments, especially, kind of our department funds that are listed here, because that's where I think some of that transparency and clarity really needs to occur when individual departments are listed with these funds, and how does that align with the budget? How does that align with the service team structure? How does that align with, like you said, one county, one mission here? So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And thank you also for the question, Commissioner McDonough. Again, with great appreciation for the presentation, I have hands that are still raised, but I think they're just left over on the screen. And I believe that we are going, no? Oh, okay. Heard a thought there. In any case, I will just check back in with our county manager prior to our movement on. I see Commissioner Reinhardt's hand is still there.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize my mic was on.
No problem.
But I just wanted to say, because of the timing here, I'm not going to go over the important dates again, but I would urge people to go into the open data portal. You can get all of the dates, all of the information that's been presented today. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt, for finishing us up. We'll check in with the county manager. We are due to move on to our update section, starting with the legislative update and including updates from our board members prior to adjourning. I'll check in with the county manager and then with our legislative chair.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think we're asking if one more time the dates could be put up on the screen per Commissioner Reinhardt's request. There they were. There they are. Those are the dates. And if you want to sign up to testify again, the link is down below. RamseyCounty.us. If you were to type in budget in the white box, you would find all information related to the budget. I will close by thanking all the leaders who presented today, representing thousands of dedicated public servants. Thank all of you in advance as the board for the conversation to come in the weeks ahead. And finally, just an acknowledgement that this budget is built upon years and years of hard work that come before it. And so for those who preceded me in my role and in all the other roles you've seen today, an appreciation for the many people who used to work in Ramsey County and have since moved on or retired as well. We do this as a both short and long-term approach, as our CFO said. Thank you very much, and we look forward to the weeks ahead.
Thank you very much. And again, also to Commissioner Reinhardt for your final comments on the budget. And now I'll turn to Commissioner McGuire for our legislative update.
Mary Jo. I'm sorry, Mary Jo, I'm being told that they can't hear you on television. And so we're being told that you're not heard on television.
Madam Chair, I think we're going to have a gremlin audio problem at this point, and I'm really sorry
about that. Gotcha. I'll repeat some of that. Okay. So thank you very much, Commissioner McGuire. Should we continue or should I just simply repeat? Okay.
I think that they...
Not sure. So here's what we'll do. We'll just indicate that you shared that there is likely to be a 9/11, a September 11th special session. We're hoping, and that hearings have started on the Minnesota commissioners. You also shared that the Ramsey County delegation was present at the Food and Basic Needs meeting this past week. Was present at the Food and Basic Needs Committee meeting and will be present at the upcoming homelessness. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So the commissioners corrected me. I'm sorry that the delegation has been invited to be in attendance at the homelessness subcommittee, that our Congresswoman Betty McCollum was at the Food and Basic Needs Subcommittee. And finally, I'm not sure that I captured it all, but thank you so much. Go ahead. Oh, yes, and that the housing assistance money at the state from the CARES Act is now available for application. Thank you very much, Commissioner. So that is our legislative update. We apologize for the sound quirks. And thank you to the Commissioner. We're going to move on to County Connections from the County Manager, and we'll move to our board reports quickly as time is available. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just one update today, and it's good news, and I wanted to make sure I got to share it with the board. Forbes magazine every year does a list of the top 50 employers in each state across the country. It's an anonymous survey to employees and organizations over 500 people. We have no idea if any of our employees get contacted and no input into the process. But Ramsey County was named as the 20th best employer in the state of Minnesota over the past week. I believe we were the only county on the list. And other than the fact that my spouse's organization finished first, so I have to endure that at home, I want to seriously say that's a testament to the county board and every employee who works here. I have worked in Ramsey County for 7 years, and I feel that joy of getting to work here and really appreciate getting a chance to see that recognized. And whoever our employees were who were reached out to and shared thoughts about the organization, we appreciate you.
An amazing update. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Indeed, we know how hard leadership works, and this board has worked to set the foundation for us to continue as a employer of choice. And so thank you for that acknowledgement. I'm going to move on then to board reports. We'll begin that with Commissioner Fretham and end with Commissioner Reinhardt. Commissioner Fretham.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick because we are way over time. I'll reiterate, as Commissioner Reinhardt raised up, we are having a town hall on affordable housing this Thursday. Thank you so much to our Community Economic Development team, Terry Collins, Martha Faust, for helping assemble that, and then our partners with the Center for Economic Inclusion for really leading these efforts and bringing information about our plan for economic inclusion to our partners. So I hope folks are going to be able to join us. Thank you, and shout out to the Arden Hills Shoreview Rotary for inviting me to their meeting this morning before the board meeting and allowing to give a brief state of the county update to the partners out there and share the work that we've been doing at the county to keep going in light of COVID and everything else that's going on. I appreciate all that you do for our community and the chance to virtually meet everyone. And then finally was able to jump into the Metro Alliance for Healthy Families home visiting governing board meeting yesterday, get an update on the work that they've been doing and how they've managed to transition to virtual home visiting. It's been challenging. I'm really impressed at how they've been trying to make that work to continue to support families in this age of COVID or whatever you want to call it, and how they've managed to, even in virtual visits, support families for without sacrificing too much in terms of the time that they spend with these families. It's hard to maintain a 45-minute Zoom conversation, but their average virtual visits are still averaging around 45 minutes, and their in-person visits for about an hour, and that's impressive when you think about it. So thank you to all of the home visitors who are still out there supporting families and trying to build relationships and support the youngest residents, not only in Ramsey County, but across the metro area. So that's my update.
Moving forward alphabetically, Commissioner Mattis-Castillo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be really quick. I just want to give a special shout out to our Public Works Department, who are currently today out making the permanent changes on Larpenteur Avenue and the 4-3 conversion, as well as Maryland Avenue this week. So just want to say thank you to Public Works for improving our all abilities transportation. And a special thank you to the St. Paul Police Department, Officer Sergeant Cat Brown, and Commander Ellison and I had a town hall last night on Facebook Live around our Stop For Me campaigns and working in partnership with St. Paul and Ramsey County Public Works on keeping our streets safe for pedestrians and reminding drivers that in this time of COVID that they need to slow down and stop for pedestrians as we cross the road. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Mattis-Castillo. Commissioner McDonough.
No report.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonough. Commissioner McGuire. And I know we'll have difficulty potentially. Thank you. We'll hear from Commissioner McGuire next week due to sound concerns, and we'll go on then to Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you, and I will make this quick. I did have the opportunity this weekend to go out to Battle Creek Regional Park and the new play area that is there that is so impressive. And I mentioned to the county board members prior to us starting the meeting that I think my granddaughter's comment sums it up, and she said, "This is awesome." And so, get a chance to go out, and there were people there, and being socially, distanced and responsible, and masks on, and but still enjoying the outdoors, which is something that we need to do. Also, just one quick update, and that is the Recycling and Energy Board met and talked about the bonding request that we have for upgrading for organics and recyclables, and the timeline that we have moving forward for other technologies as well, to be prepared for 2027 when we make we need to make a significant shift away from the waste to energy to other options, synthetic fuels, gasification, anaerobic digestion, and a number of different things. All kinds of technology that are available to us now. Anyhow, we did vote to move forward, not taking the pressure off of the state as far as the bonding request by any means, but those actions will be coming to each of our individual county boards, and so that will be coming forward sometime before the end of the year. But it was a really good, healthy discussion, and wanting to make sure that we need to move forward, but we are not going to take the pressure off of the state to step up and provide some of the funding for this, because it is a mandate. It's a good reason for a mandate, the environmental and climate change issues that go along with the environment. But we need to have the state to be a partner because of those mandates. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Commissioner Reinhardt. just noting that this has been important work that we've been doing today and every day. As in every board meeting, I want to thank all of you for the time and attention that you've extended during this period. Where normally we end at noon, we've just had a lot to do. Acknowledging that each one of us is here and attentive, and that Commissioner Ortega, except for a family emergency, would have been here with us today. Once again, thank you. Prayers for the commissioner and for his family. And I would just like to say that because we are running very late, I'm not going to add a date. I am going to add the adjournment of this board meeting. And so we are now, before I do so, just want to mention that we do have a session at 1:30 electronically. It is an executive session. And so now we are formally, officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.